Welcome back to another story on Infidelity Tales Lab. Before we begin, tell us, where in the world are you watching from? Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1. The Discovery. Damon Lynch had built his fortune on reading people, knowing when they lied, when they schemed, when they betrayed. 20 years in private security consulting had taught him that everyone had secrets, but he never imagined the darkest secret would be sleeping beside him every night. The call from his assistant came at 2:47 a.m. during his business trip to Chicago. "Mr. Lynch, your wife called. Your daughter, Emma, is at St. Mary's Hospital with an ear infection." Damon caught the first flight home to Denver, his mind racing. 6-year-old Emma had always been healthy, never even a serious cold. The 3-hour flight felt eternal as worry gnawed at him. Christine had sounded frantic on the phone, barely coherent through her tears. He burst through the hospital doors at 8 a.m., still wearing his rumpled business suit. Christine sat in the waiting room, her auburn hair disheveled, makeup smeared. Beside her sat her father, Herman Butler, a man Damon had never fully trusted despite 15 years of marriage. "Daddy," Emma's weak voice called as he entered her room. She lay pale against white sheets, her left ear bandaged. "Hey, princess, Daddy's here now." Damon kissed her forehead, his heart breaking at her fevered state. Dr. Patricia Trujillo entered, her expression grave. "Mr. Lynch, I need to speak with you privately." In the hallway, the doctor's words hit like a sledgehammer. This wasn't a natural infection. Someone deliberately placed a foreign object deep in your daughter's ear canal. It caused significant inflammation and could have permanently damaged her hearing. Damon's blood turned to ice. "What kind of object?" Dr. Trujillo's hands trembled slightly as she produced a small evidence bag. Inside was a sophisticated microtransmitter no bigger than a pill. "It's some kind of listening device. Very advanced. The police have been notified, but Mr. Lynch." She paused, studying his face. "Did you leave your daughter with someone recently?" "Yes." The word came out as a growl. "With my wife and her parents during my business trip." The doctor's expression darkened. "Mr. Lynch, placing this required medical precision. Someone held your daughter down and inserted this deep enough to avoid detection during casual examination. This was calculated." Damon stared at the device, his mind processing implications with the cold efficiency that had made him successful. Someone had used his daughter as a surveillance device. Someone with access to his home, his family, his life. "Who knew about your Chicago meeting?" Dr. Trujillo asked gently. "My wife. Her parents. My business partner." Damon stopped, a terrible realization forming. Only 4 people knew the specific details of that deal. As if summoned by his thoughts, Christine appeared in the doorway. "Damon, what's wrong? You look. Come here." His voice was deadly calm. Christine approached hesitantly, her green eyes darting between Damon and the doctor. When she saw the evidence bag, her face went white. "Can you explain this?" Damon held up the transmitter. What is that?" "I don't understand." But Damon saw it. The micro-expression that lasted a split second. Recognition. Fear. Not confusion. In that instant, 20 years of reading people told him everything he needed to know. "The doctor says someone with medical knowledge placed this in Emma's ear." Damon's voice remained eerily controlled. "Someone who had access to her while I was in Chicago." Christine's lip trembled. "Are you suggesting? How could you even think?" "I'm not suggesting anything." Damon pocketed the evidence bag. "I'm stating facts. Someone used our daughter as a listening device. Someone who knew about the Chicago deal, which is worth $47 million. Dr. Trujillo cleared her throat. "I'll leave you two to discuss this. Emma will be fine, but I recommend counseling for the trauma." She looked directly at Christine. Children remember violation, even when they can't articulate it. After the doctor left, husband and wife stood in the sterile hallway, the weight of unspoken accusations hanging between them. "I would never hurt Emma," Christine whispered. "No," Damon agreed, his gray eyes boring into hers. "But you'd let someone else do it." Christine's composure cracked. "That's not." "You're wrong." "Am I?" Damon stepped closer, and Christine unconsciously retreated. Then explain why my daughter has nightmares about the man with cold hands that started exactly 3 days ago. Explain why she's been afraid to sleep in her own room. Explain why she keeps asking if the doctor game is over. Each word hit Christine like a physical blow. Her face cycled through emotions: denial, fear, guilt, and finally a flash of something that looked almost like relief. Damon, please. No. He turned toward Emma's room. I'm taking my daughter home. You can go back to your parents' house. Don't come home until I say you can. As Damon walked away, he heard Christine's whispered phone call. It didn't work. He knows something's wrong. What do we do now? Damon smiled coldly. The hunt had begun. Chapter 2. Unraveling Threads. Damon's Bentley pulled into the circular driveway of his Highlands Ranch mansion at sunset. Emma slept peacefully in her car's seat, finally free of pain thanks to antibiotics. The Victorian-style home he'd bought for Christine's 30th birthday now felt like a crime scene. Ross, I need you here. Damon spoke in his phone as he carried Emma inside. Ross Hartman had been his business partner for a decade, and the closest thing Damon had to a friend. Bring the debugging equipment. While waiting, Damon tucked Emma into the guest bedroom. He couldn't bear putting her back in her own room yet, and began his own investigation. Years of security work had taught him that amateurs always left traces. In Christine's walk-in closet, he found the first evidence: a cell phone hidden behind shoeboxes. Not a regular phone, but a burner with only 3 contacts: G, Dad, and Emergency. The text history made his blood boil. G, device placement successful. Audio quality excellent. Christine, she cried for hours. I can't do this anymore. G, remember what's at stake. Chicago deal worth more than we estimated. Christine, what about after? You promised we'd be together. G, soon, baby. Once Lynch is eliminated, everything changes. Eliminated? They weren't just stealing from him. They were planning to kill him. Ross arrived within an hour, his tall frame carrying sophisticated electronic equipment. Jesus, Damon, you look like death. What's this about? Damon showed him the transmitter and the text messages. Ross, a former Navy SEAL turned tech specialist, whistled low. Military grade. This isn't some cheating wife hiring a private investigator. Someone with serious resources is after you. Sweep the house. Everything. It took 3 hours, but they found 6 more devices. 2 in Damon's home office, 1 in the master bedroom, 1 in his car, and 2 in his personal study. The level of surveillance was extraordinary. They know everything, Ross muttered, examining a device disguised as a wall outlet. Every phone call, every meeting, every conversation with Emma. Damon's jaw clenched. How long? Based on the installation methods, I'd say 6 months minimum. 6 months. His mind raced through every private conversation, every business deal, every intimate moment with his wife. All of it recorded, analyzed, used against him. There's more, Ross said grimly. These devices have been transmitting to a location in Cherry Creek. Expensive neighborhood. Damon knew Cherry Creek well. It's where he'd first met Gerard Hancock 5 years ago at a charity gala. Gerard, the charming art dealer who'd become a family friend. Gerard, who'd been to their house dozens of times. Gerard, who'd shown unusual interest in Damon's business dealings. I want full surveillance on Gerard Hancock, Damon told Ross. Financial records, phone logs, travel history. Everything. You think he's G? I think he's a dead man. As if to confirm his suspicions, Damon's phone buzzed with a text from Christine. Please come to Dad's house. We need to talk. This is all a misunderstanding. Instead of responding, Damon drove to Cherry Creek and parked outside Gerard's gallery. Through the window, he could see Gerard pacing frantically, phone pressed to his ear. Even from 50 yards away, the man's body language screamed panic. Damon's phone rang. Unknown number. Lynch. His voice was ice. Mr. Lynch? A nervous voice he didn't recognize. This is Craig Durham. I work for Gerard Hancock. He asked me to call you. Put him on. He can't come to the phone right now, but he wanted me to tell you that there's been a misunderstanding about your wife. And Damon hung up and called Ross. I need backgrounds on every employee at Hancock Gallery. Also check Gerard Hancock's financial records against anyone named Craig Durham. 20 minutes later, Ross called back. Craig Durham is Gerard's accountant. But here's the interesting part. He's also Herman Butler's nephew. The pieces clicked into place. Herman Butler, Christine's father, and a retired banker with connections throughout Denver's financial district. Gerard Hancock, art dealer with cash flow problems and expensive tastes. Craig Durham, the link between them. This wasn't just about adultery. This was a carefully orchestrated conspiracy involving his wife's family, her lover, and possibly others. They'd used his daughter as a surveillance device to steal his business secrets and plan his murder. Damon smiled grimly as he watched Gerard through the gallery window. The man was sweating despite the cool evening air, constantly checking his watch and phone. His phone buzzed again. Another text from Christine. Damon, please. Emma needs both her parents. Can't we work this out? He typed back. Come home tomorrow at 8 p.m. Come alone. We'll work everything out. As he drove home, Damon's mind was already 3 steps ahead. These people had made one critical mistake. They'd underestimated him. They thought he was just another wealthy businessman, soft, trusting, vulnerable. They were about to learn that Damon Lynch had earned his fortune in the shadows, where mercy was weakness and betrayal was paid for in blood. Chapter 3. The Banker's Gambit. At 6 a.m. the next morning, Damon sat in his home office reviewing financial records while Emma ate breakfast with a nanny he'd hired overnight, a thoroughly vetted former FBI agent named Rebecca Hall. He would never again leave his daughter's safety to chance. The previous night's research had revealed the full scope of the conspiracy. Herman Butler hadn't retired from banking. He'd been forced out after an internal investigation into unauthorized account access. Gerard Hancock's gallery was bleeding money, kept afloat by questionable loans. Craig Durham had been quietly moving money between offshore accounts for both men. But the real revelation came when Damon accessed his own bank records. Over the past 6 months, someone had been making small withdrawals from his accounts. Never enough to trigger alerts, but totaling nearly $300,000. The money had been filtered through a complex web of accounts before landing in a Cayman Islands bank. They've been bleeding me dry, he murmured, studying the transfer patterns. His phone rang. It was Spencer Gomez, his security company's forensic accountant. Damon, you need to see this. I ran the financial analysis you requested on the Butler family. Spencer's voice was tight with excitement. Herman Butler has been planning this for years. He's got detailed records going back to your wedding. What kind of records? Everything. Your business deals, personal habits, even psychological profiles. It's like he's been studying you as a mark since day one. The implications hit Damon like a physical blow. His marriage hadn't just gone bad. It had been a setup from the beginning. 15 years of his life, his daughter's birth, every intimate moment. All of it orchestrated. Spencer, I need you to do something for me. Can you trace the exact source of the listening device? These things have serial numbers, manufacturing records. Already on it. Give me an hour. Damon hung up and walked to the kitchen where Emma was playing with her cereal. Despite everything, she was smiling. The resilience of childhood was remarkable. Daddy, when is Mommy coming home? Tonight, sweetheart. But first, Daddy has some work to do. At 10 a.m., Ross arrived with a thick folder and a grim expression. You're not going to like this. The surveillance photos were devastating. Gerard and Christine had been meeting regularly for over a year, but not just for romantic encounters. The photos showed them with Herman Butler, Craig Durham, and 2 other men Damon didn't recognize at various locations around Denver. It gets worse, Ross continued. I tracked down the listening device's serial number. It was purchased by a company called Mountain Security Solutions. Never heard of them. That's because it's a shell company. Guess who's listed as the primary shareholder? Damon's jaw tightened. Herman Butler. Gets better. Mountain Security Solutions has contracts with 3 major Denver banks, including First National, where your business accounts are held. The final piece clicked. Herman Butler had used his banking connections to establish a security company, which gave him legitimate access to surveillance equipment and inside information about high-value targets. Damon wasn't their first victim. He was just their biggest score. There's one more thing, Ross said quietly. I found evidence of at least 4 other similar operations over the past decade. Wealthy men, all of them had wives or girlfriends connected to Herman Butler's extended network. What happened to them? Ross opened another folder, revealing newspaper clippings. 2 died in accidents. 1 supposedly committed suicide during a messy divorce. The 4th disappeared entirely, declared dead after 7 years. Damon stared at the photos of dead men who'd trusted the wrong people. Men like him, who'd built wealth and then had it stolen by those closest to them. They're not just thieves, he said quietly. They're serial killers. At 3 p.m., Spencer called back with more devastating news. Damon, the Chicago deal, they know every detail. I found evidence that Gerard Hancock has been in contact with your competitors. If that deal falls through, you're looking at bankruptcy. Can you save it? Maybe. But I need to know, how far are you willing to go? Damon looked out his window at Emma playing in the garden, protected by Rebecca Hull's watchful presence. His daughter deserved better than a father who rolled over when threatened. Whatever it takes. That evening at 7:45 p.m., Damon sat in his living room, a glass of bourbon in hand. The house was quiet. Emma was at a sleepover with the daughter of one of his most trusted employees, safely away from what was about to unfold. At exactly 8 p.m., Christine's car pulled into the driveway. She entered the house cautiously, her usual confidence replaced by nervous energy. "Where's Emma?" she asked. "Safe." Damon gestured to the chair across from him. "Sit." Christine perched on the edge of the chair, her hands clasped tightly. "Damon, about the device. I can explain. I'm sure you can. But first, let me tell you what I know." Damon's voice was conversational, almost friendly. "I know about Gerard. I know about your father's company. I know about the money you've been stealing. I know about the Chicago deal." Christine's face went white, but she tried to maintain her composure. "You're jumping to conclusions. I know about Mountain Security Solutions. I know about the other victims. I know about the murders." The last word hung in the air like a death sentence. Christine's facade crumbled completely. "It wasn't supposed to be like this," she whispered. "When Dad first suggested it, he said we'd just take some money and disappear. Then Gerard got involved, and things got complicated. Complicated." Damon's voice turned deadly. "You put a listening device in our daughter's ear. You violated a 6-year-old child to steal from me." Tears streamed down Christine's face. "I never wanted to hurt Emma. I told them it was too much, but they said if I didn't cooperate, they'd kill you anyway and make it look like a business rival did it. So you chose to betray me instead of warn me. I chose to keep you alive." Christine's composure snapped. "Do you think this was easy? Living with the guilt, pretending everything was normal?" Damon stood slowly, his gray eyes boring into hers. "You want to know what's not easy? Explaining to my daughter why mommy hurt her. Rebuilding a business after your family tried to destroy it. Learning that my entire marriage was a lie. What are you going to do?" Damon smiled, and for the first time, Christine saw the man who'd built his fortune in the shadows of private security. "I'm going to give you and your conspirators exactly what you deserve." Chapter 4. The Professional's Preparation. 3 days after Christine's confession, Damon sat in his private office reviewing personnel files. The room had been completely debugged and secured, making it the only place in his house where he could plan freely. His laptop displayed detailed dossiers on each member of the conspiracy, compiled by his team of investigators. Ross entered carrying coffee and a secure phone. "The Chicago deal? Secured. Spencer managed to convince our partners that the leak came from their side." Damon closed the laptop. "They're actually offering better terms now, out of guilt. And the targets?" Damon opened a leather folder containing 5 photographs. Herman Butler, Gerard Hancock, Craig Durham, and 2 other men, Sean Archer and Byron Frazier, who'd been identified as muscle for the operation. Herman Butler is the architect. Take him down, the rest fall apart. Damon's finger traced Butler's photo. "But I want them all to understand what happens when you touch my family." Ross studied the photos with professional interest. Both men had worked in private security long enough to know that some problems couldn't be solved through legal channels. "What's the timeline?" 3 weeks. I want to give them enough rope to hang themselves, then pull it tight all at once." Damon's phone buzzed with a text from Christine. "Please let me see Emma. I'm staying at Dad's house and going crazy." Instead of responding, Damon called his lawyer, Clarence Kelly, a man who specialized in complex divorce cases involving hidden assets. "Clarence, I need a complete forensic audit of my wife's family. Financial records, property ownership, everything going back 15 years. Preparing for divorce proceedings? Preparing for war." That afternoon, Damon drove to an industrial warehouse in Commerce City where he kept specialized equipment from his security consulting days. Most of his clients had been legitimate corporations, but some assignments had required tools that existed in legal gray areas. The warehouse contained everything from surveillance equipment to more exotic items, the kind of hardware that could make problems disappear permanently. Damon had hoped never to access this arsenal again, but his family's safety demanded exceptions to his usual moral boundaries. He selected several items: untraceable communication devices, miniature cameras, financial tracking software, and other tools that would level the playing field against his enemies. His secure phone rang. It was Frederick Dodson, a contact from his military contracting days who now operated private intelligence services. "Lynch? Heard you might need some specialized assistance." "Maybe. Can you provide background on a man named Gerard Hancock?" "I need everything. Financial, personal, criminal history, if any. Give me 48 hours. That evening, Damon picked up Emma from Rebecca Hall's apartment. The nanny had been invaluable, providing security while also serving as a trauma counselor for Emma's recent experiences. "How is she?" Damon asked as Emma played with toys in the next room. "Resilient. Children are remarkable that way. But she's been asking about her mother." "I know. I'm trying to protect her from the worst of this." Rebecca studied Damon's face. "And what happens when the protection requires actions that can't be undone?" The question hung between them. Rebecca had been FBI long enough to recognize when someone was planning something that crossed legal lines. "My daughter's safety comes first," Damon said finally. "Everything else is secondary." That night, after Emma was asleep, Damon received a call from Spencer with disturbing news. They're accelerating their timeline. Gerard Hancock just booked a flight to the Cayman Islands for next week. If he reaches those offshore accounts, the money disappears forever. "How much are we talking about?" "Based on my analysis, close to $2 million stolen from you and at least 3 other victims over the past 5 years. Damon felt his anger crystallize into cold determination. They weren't just thieves. They were predators who'd perfected their system over years of practice. "Spencer, I need you to freeze every account you can identify. Use whatever legal mechanisms necessary." "Already in progress." "But Damon, once we make these moves, they'll know we're onto them. They might run, or worse, they might accelerate their plans for you." "Good. Let them come." The next morning, Damon received the call he'd been expecting. Herman Butler's voice was carefully controlled, but Damon could hear the underlying tension. "Damon, I think we need to talk. Man to man." "About what, Herman?" "About Christine. About the family. About misunderstandings that have gotten out of hand." "I'm listening. Not over the phone. Meet me at my house tonight. 7 o'clock. Just you and me." Damon smiled grimly. They were finally ready to make their move. "I'll be there." After hanging up, Damon called Ross. "They're accelerating. Butler wants a face-to-face tonight." "It's a trap." "Of course it is. Which is why we're going to be ready for them." As Damon prepared for the evening's confrontation, he thought about the men who'd underestimated him. They saw a successful businessman and assumed that meant soft, naive, unprepared for real violence. They were about to learn that Damon Lynch had earned his fortune in darker corners of the world, where survival depended on being more ruthless than your enemies. Tonight, the hunt would begin in earnest. Chapter 5. Setting the Trap. Herman Butler's house in Cherry Hills Village looked like something from a magazine, sprawling ranch style with manicured gardens and a circular driveway lined with expensive cars. As Damon pulled up at 7 p.m., he noted the positioning. Gerard Hancock's BMW, Craig Durham's Mercedes, and a black SUV he didn't recognize. They'd brought backup. Good. He'd planned for that. Ross's voice crackled through Damon's nearly invisible earpiece. "I've got eyes on all exits. 3 men inside besides Butler, Gerard, Durham, and someone new. Big guy looks military. That'll be Sean Archer. Former mercenary, works private security now. Damon checked his concealed recording device one final time. Remember, I need them to confess on record before we move to phase 2. Damon walked to the front door, his movements relaxed and confident. He'd learned long ago that appearing unthreatened often made opponents overconfident. Herman Butler answered the door personally, his politician's smile firmly in place. At 62, he still carried himself with the authority of a man who'd controlled millions in banking assets. Damon, come in, come in. Thank you for agreeing to meet. The living room had been carefully arranged. Herman sat behind a large oak desk, a power position. Gerard Hancock lounged in a leather chair to the left, trying to look casual but failing to hide his nervousness. Craig Durham sat rigid in a straight-back chair, sweat beading his forehead despite the cool evening. The fourth man stood near the window, Sean Archer, exactly as Ross had described. 6'3", military-bearing, the kind of man who solved problems with violence. Drink, Herman offered, gesturing to a well-stocked bar. I'm fine. Damon took the chair opposite Herman, noting the positioning put Archer behind him. Amateur hour. What did you want to discuss? Herman's expression grew serious. My daughter made some serious accusations about listening devices, financial irregularities, frankly, some pretty wild conspiracy theories. Are they theories? Of course they are. Gerard finally spoke, his voice too loud. This whole thing is a misunderstanding that's gotten completely out of hand. Damon turned to study Gerard. Mid-40s, soft around the middle, the kind of man who'd never faced real consequences for his actions. Explain the misunderstanding. Gerard exchanged glances with Herman. The device your daughter, the one found in her ear, it was placed there by accident. Accident. Damon's voice was dangerously quiet. Medical confusion, Craig Durham interjected, speaking for the first time. A mix-up at the hospital during a routine examination. Damon almost laughed. They were really going to try to gaslight him. So you're saying Dr. Patricia Trujillo, a board-certified pediatric specialist, somehow confused a sophisticated listening device for standard medical equipment. The men exchanged nervous looks. Herman leaned forward, his banker's instincts telling him to cut losses. Damon, let's speak plainly. You're a successful man. Sometimes success makes enemies. It's possible someone planted that device to cause problems in your family. Someone with medical knowledge and access to my daughter. Exactly, which rules out anyone in this room. Damon pulled out his phone and played an audio recording. Christine's confession from 3 nights ago. Her voice filled the room. When Dad first suggested it, he said we'd just take some money and disappear. Then Gerard got involved, and things got complicated. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Sean Archer's hand moved closer to his jacket. She was emotional, Herman said carefully. Confused. You can't take anything she said seriously. She also mentioned other victims. For men over the past decade. 2 died in accidents. Now Gerard stood up, his composure finally cracking. You're fishing. You don't have any real evidence. Don't I? Damon's smile was predatory. Mountain Security Solutions. Shell Company established 3 years ago with Herman Butler as primary shareholder. Serial number VK 4471. X on the listening device. Purchased by Mountain Security 2 months ago. Craig Durham's face went pale. How could you possibly know? Because I'm better at this than you are. Herman Butler stood slowly, his politician's mask slipping to reveal something uglier underneath. You're right, of course. But it doesn't matter. Why not? Because you're not leaving this house alive. Sean Archer stepped forward, his hand inside his jacket. But instead of drawing a weapon, he produced a small device and pressed a button. The lights in the room dimmed, and Damon heard a subtle electronic hum. Signal jammer, Archer explained. Your friends outside just lost communication. Damon's expression didn't change. Did they? Through the window, 3 vehicles suddenly surrounded the house. Black SUVs with tinted windows. Men in tactical gear poured out, moving with military precision. Herman Butler's confidence evaporated. What the hell? You made one critical mistake, Damon said conversationally as the sounds of forced entry echoed from other parts of the house. You assumed I was some soft businessman who'd walk into your trap unprepared. Ross's voice came through Damon's earpiece, clear despite the jammer. Military-grade equipment has its advantages. All targets secured. The living room door burst open as Ross entered with two other men, Frederick Dodson and another operator Damon recognized from his military contracting days. Gerard tried to run, but Frederick tackled him before he reached the hallway. Craig Durham simply sat frozen, apparently too terrified to move. Gentlemen, Damon stood, brushing off his jacket. You wanted to have a conversation about my family. Now we're going to have that conversation properly. Herman Butler's face was ashen. You can't do this. We have rights. You gave up your rights when you tortured my daughter. Damon's voice turned deadly cold. When you stole from me. When you planned to murder me. Sean Archer reached for his weapon, but found himself staring down the barrels of 3 assault rifles. He slowly raised his hands. Smart man, Frederick commented. Damon walked to Herman's desk and sat down, appropriating the power position. Now, let's discuss exactly how this is going to work. You're going to return every penny you've stolen, from me and from your other victims. You're going to provide complete records of your operations. And then, he paused, studying each terrified face. Then we're going to discuss what happens to people who hurt children. Chapter 6, The Gathering Storm. The abandoned warehouse in Commerce City had been Damon's backup facility for years, a place where sensitive conversations could happen without interruption. Now it served as an interrogation center for the 5 men who destroyed his family. Each conspirator was secured in a separate room, unable to communicate with the others. Psychological isolation was always more effective than physical threats, though Damon wasn't ruling out the latter. Ross emerged from Herman Butler's room, carrying a laptop and several file folders. He's talking. Full confession, financial records, everything. Says he wants to make a deal. What kind of deal? Immunity in exchange for information about their network. Turns out this operation is bigger than we thought. Damon studied the files Ross had brought. Bank records showed a complex web of theft spanning 7 years and involving 12 victims. All wealthy men who'd been systematically targeted, robbed, and in 4 cases murdered. How much total? Conservative estimate? $15 million. But that's just the liquid assets. They've also been acquiring property through shell companies, using stolen identities to establish credit lines, even running insurance fraud schemes. The scope was staggering. This wasn't just a family of thieves. It was an organized criminal enterprise that had been operating with impunity for years. What about the others? Gerard is trying to blame everything on Herman. Says he was just following orders, didn't know about the murders. Ross's expression was disgusted. Craig Durham is claiming he was just doing bookkeeping, completely innocent. And Archer, professional to the end, won't say a word without his lawyer. Damon walked to the window, overlooking the warehouse floor. In the past 18 hours, his life had changed completely. He'd discovered his marriage was a fraud, his wife was a criminal, and his daughter had been tortured as part of an elaborate theft scheme. The old Damon might have turned everything over to the FBI and trusted the justice system. But the old Damon hadn't seen his daughter violated by the people he'd trusted most. His secure phone rang. It was Clarence Kelly, his attorney. Damon, I've completed the forensic audit you requested. You need to see this immediately. Bad news. Catastrophic news. Your wife has been systematically transferring marital assets for over 2 years. The house, your investment accounts, even Emma's college fund. It's all been leveraged as collateral for loans that went directly to offshore accounts. Damon closed his eyes. How much? Total exposure? You're looking at bankruptcy unless we can recover the assets quickly. And Damon, there's something else. Christine filed for divorce yesterday. She's claiming you threatened her and abandoned Emma. She's asking for full custody and spousal support. The final insult. They'd stolen his money, tortured his daughter, and now they want to take her away permanently. She's also filed a restraining order, Clarence continued. Claims you're dangerous and unstable. The hearing is tomorrow morning. Damon ended the call and stood silent for several minutes, processing the magnitude of their betrayal. They hadn't just planned to rob him. They designed a systematic destruction of his entire life. Ross appeared beside him. Problem? They're trying to take Emma. Ross's expression darkened. He'd seen Damon's relationship with his daughter, knew that Emma was the only thing that mattered to him. What do you need? Time. And evidence that will destroy them in court. How much time? 6 hours. The custody hearing is at 9 a.m. Ross nodded grimly. We'll get what you need. Over the next 3 hours, Damon's team extracted confessions from each conspirator. The methods weren't gentle, but they were effective. Herman Butler broke first, providing detailed records of the entire operation. Gerard Hancock followed, desperate to minimize his own culpability. Craig Durham, faced with evidence of his central role in the financial fraud, agreed to cooperate fully. Only Sean Archer remained silent, but his participation was documented by the others' testimony. By midnight, Damon had everything he needed: recorded confessions, financial records, documentation of 12 separate criminal schemes, and evidence that would not only clear his name, but destroy his enemies in court. But legal victory wasn't enough. These people had hurt his daughter. At 3 a.m., Damon sat alone with Herman Butler in the warehouse's main office. Butler looked haggard, his earlier confidence replaced by desperate fear. I've given you everything, Butler pleaded. Confessions, records, account numbers. I've cooperated completely. Yes, you have, Damon agreed. Which brings us to the final matter. What final matter? Damon leaned forward. You torture my daughter. You held down a 6-year-old child and violated her ear canal with a medical instrument. Butler's face went white. That wasn't my idea. Gerard insisted we needed audio surveillance. You were the one with medical connections. You were the one who arranged for the device placement. I thought it would just be uncomfortable. I didn't know it would cause an infection. Damon studied the man who'd orchestrated his family's destruction. Do you have children, Herman? 2 daughters. You know that. How would you feel if someone did to them what you did to Emma? Butler began to cry. Please, I'll do anything to make this right. I'll return every penny, testify against the others, whatever you want. I know you will, but that's not enough. Damon stood and walked to a steel cabinet, withdrawing a small medical kit. You see, Herman, I believe in proportional justice. You used medical knowledge to hurt my daughter. So we're going to use medical knowledge to hurt you. What are you talking about? Nothing permanent. Nothing that will kill you. But you're going to experience exactly what Emma experienced, only without anesthesia. The next 2 hours broke Herman Butler completely. By dawn, he was a sobbing wreck who would have confessed to anything to make the pain stop. At 7 a.m., Damon walked out of the warehouse, carrying a briefcase full of evidence that would destroy his enemies in court. Behind him, 5 broken men waited for the FBI agents who would arrive in exactly 1 hour, tipped off by an anonymous call about a major financial fraud operation. Emma would be safe. His business would recover. His enemies would spend decades in federal prison. But the real satisfaction came from knowing that each of them now understood what it felt like to be completely powerless, completely violated, completely at the mercy of someone who didn't care about their pain. Justice, Damon reflected, had many faces. Chapter 7, The Reckoning. The Douglas County Courthouse was unusually crowded for a 9 a.m. custody hearing. Damon arrived with Clarence Kelly and a briefcase containing evidence that would change everything. Across the courtroom, Christine sat with her attorney, a sharp-looking woman named Jennifer Vance who specialized in high-asset divorces. Christine looked haggard, her usual polished appearance replaced by nervous energy. She'd clearly been crying, her makeup imperfect despite obvious attempts to repair it. Judge Patricia Monroe entered, a stern woman in her 50s known for her no-nonsense approach to family law. This is an emergency custody hearing in the matter of Lynch versus Lynch. Ms. Vance, you've alleged immediate danger to the minor child. Present your case. Jennifer Vance stood confidently. Your Honor, my client has evidence that her husband has become increasingly unstable and dangerous. Yesterday, he threatened her family and disappeared with their daughter, for over 12 hours without explanation. Mr. Kelly? Clarence Kelly rose slowly, his expression grave. Your Honor, my client has been investigating a criminal conspiracy involving his wife and her family. What we've discovered will shock this court. That's a serious allegation, Counselor. Indeed it is. Clarence opened his briefcase and withdrew a stack of documents. I'd like to present evidence that Mrs. Lynch and her co-conspirators have been conducting an elaborate fraud scheme targeting wealthy men for robbery and murder. Jennifer Vance shot to her feet. Objection. This is a custody hearing, not a criminal trial. Sustained, but I'll allow limited presentation if it directly relates to the child's welfare. Clarence activated a laptop connected to the courtroom's display system. Your Honor, 3 days ago, the minor child Emma Lynch was taken to the hospital with a severe ear infection. What the doctors discovered was not a natural infection, but the result of someone deliberately placing a listening device deep in her ear canal. Christine's face went white as medical photographs appeared on the screen, showing the extracted transmitter. The device required medical knowledge to place correctly and was sophisticated enough to transmit audio for weeks without detection. Investigation revealed it was part of a comprehensive surveillance operation against Mr. Lynch, orchestrated by his wife and her father. Judge Monroe leaned forward, studying the evidence. These are serious allegations. Do you have proof of Mrs. Lynch's involvement? Yes, Your Honor. Clarence played the audio recording of Christine's confession. Her voice filled the courtroom. When Dad first suggested it, he said we'd just take some money and disappear. The recording continued for 10 minutes, documenting the entire conspiracy. By the end, Christine was sobbing quietly while her attorney sat in stunned silence. There's more, Clarence continued. Financial records show systematic theft of marital assets totaling over $2 million. Phone records document Mrs. Lynch's affair with Gerard Hancock, who has been identified as the operations field coordinator. Judge Monroe's expression grew increasingly severe. Mrs. Lynch, did you participate in placing this device in your daughter's ear? Christine could barely speak. I didn't want to. They said if I didn't help, they'd kill Damon anyway. So you chose to facilitate the torture of a 6-year-old child rather than contact authorities? I was scared. Of whom? My father, Gerard. They said they killed other people who didn't cooperate. The courtroom erupted in murmurs. Judge Monroe banged her gavel for silence. Mr. Kelly, where are these co-conspirators now? In federal custody, Your Honor. They were arrested this morning on charges of wire fraud, money laundering, and conspiracy to commit murder. Jennifer Vance finally found her voice. Your Honor, even if these allegations are true, my client was clearly a victim of coercion. A victim who chose to torture her own daughter rather than protect her. Judge Monroe interrupted. Mrs. Lynch, you understand that I must immediately order a psychological evaluation? Yes, Your Honor, and that pending the outcome of criminal proceedings, you will have no contact with the minor child? Christine broke down completely. Please, she's all I have left. You should have considered that before you violated her trust and safety. Judge Monroe turned to Damon. Mr. Lynch, I'm granting you temporary sole custody of Emma Lynch. Mrs. Lynch will have supervised visitation only after completing court-ordered psychological evaluation and cooperating fully with federal authorities. As the judge's gavel fell, Christine collapsed in her chair, her world destroyed as completely as she'd tried to destroy Damon's. Outside the courthouse, Damon found Emma waiting with Rebecca Hall in his car. She ran to him with the uncomplicated joy of childhood, unaware that her world had just been permanently altered. Daddy, did you win? Yes, Princess. I won. Does that mean Mommy can't hurt my ear anymore? The question hit Damon like a physical blow. In her 6-year-old way, Emma had understood exactly what had happened to her. No one will ever hurt you again, he promised, holding her tightly. Daddy will make sure of that. That afternoon, Damon received a call from FBI agent Randy Stewart, who was heading the federal investigation. Mr. Lynch, I need to thank you. The evidence you provided has broken open a case we've been working for 3 years. We've now linked your wife's family to at least 15 separate criminal enterprises. What happens next? Full prosecution. Based on the confessions and financial evidence, we're looking at life sentences for Herman Butler and Gerard Hancock. Your wife? That depends on how much she cooperates. Damon felt a cold satisfaction. And the other victims? We're working to recover assets and provide restitution. Your actions may have saved several other families from destruction. As Damon hung up, he reflected on the strange justice of the situation. In trying to destroy him, his enemies had exposed themselves completely. Their greed and arrogance had been their downfall. Emma would grow up without her mother, but she'd also grow up without the threat of people who viewed her as nothing more than a tool for theft and manipulation. That evening, as Damon tucked Emma into bed in her own room, finally safe again, she asked the question he'd been dreading. "Daddy, why did Mommy hurt me?" Damon chose his words carefully. Sometimes grown-ups make very bad choices. It doesn't mean she didn't love you, but it means she chose something else over keeping you safe. Like choosing money over me. The insight was startling in a 6-year-old. Something like that. Will I see her again? Maybe someday, when you're older and if you want to. But for now, it's just you and me. Emma nodded solemnly, then brightened. That's okay. You're the best daddy in the world. As Damon watched his daughter fall asleep, he felt a peace he hadn't experienced in months. The hunt was over. His enemies were destroyed. His family, what remained of it, was safe. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but tonight, justice had been served. Chapter 8. Consequences Unfold. 6 months later, Damon sat in his rebuilt home office, reviewing quarterly reports while Emma played nearby. The house felt different now, lighter somehow, despite everything that had happened. Or perhaps because of it. The doorbell rang, and Rebecca Hall, now Emma's full-time nanny and Damon's head of security, answered it. She returned moments later with an envelope marked personal and confidential. Inside was a handwritten letter from Christine, postmarked from the Federal Detention Center in Florence, Colorado. Damon, I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I needed to write this. I've been in counseling for 4 months now, trying to understand how I became the person who could hurt our daughter. The truth is, I've been planning this since before we got married. Dad recruited me specifically to target you. I was supposed to marry you, learn your business, and then disappear with a substantial settlement after a few years. But then Emma was born, and everything changed. I fell in love with her and with the life we'd built. I kept putting off the plan, making excuses to Dad and Gerard. They finally gave me an ultimatum. Cooperate completely or watch them kill you and frame me for it. I thought I was protecting you by helping them. I see now how wrong I was. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I want you to know that Emma is the only thing I ever did right, and you're the only man I ever actually loved. Please tell her, when she's older, tell her I'm sorry. Christine. Damon folded the letter and placed it in his desk drawer. Perhaps someday Emma would want to read it, when she was old enough to understand the complexity of human nature. His phone rang. It was Spencer Gomez with the quarterly financial report. Good news across the board. The Chicago deal generated even more revenue than projected. Asset recovery from the Butler operation is nearly complete, and the new security consulting contracts are exceeding expectations. What about the civil suits? Settled. The victims' families are receiving full restitution plus punitive damages. Several have already expressed interest in hiring our security services. It was ironic. Being targeted by criminals had actually improved Damon's business reputation. Potential clients viewed him as someone who could handle serious threats and protect what mattered most. Ross entered the office carrying Emma's backpack and school artwork. How was school today, Princess? Great. I got an A on my science project about sound waves. Emma beamed as she showed Damon her graded report. The innocent joy in her face still amazed him. Children's resilience was remarkable. With proper counseling and a secure environment, Emma had processed her trauma and moved forward with life. Mr. Lynch, Rebecca appeared in the doorway. Agent Stewart is here to see you. FBI agent Randy Stewart had become a regular visitor over the past months, coordinating the complex investigation and prosecution. His presence usually meant developments in the case. Good news or bad news? Damon asked as Stewart entered. Mixed. Herman Butler died in federal custody yesterday. Heart attack. Damon felt no emotion at the news. Natural causes? The autopsy will determine that. But he'd been receiving threats from other inmates who didn't appreciate child abusers. And the others? Gerard Hancock pled guilty to avoid the death penalty. Life without parole. Craig Durham is cooperating fully. He'll serve 15 to 20. Sean Archer got 25 to life. What about Christine? Stewart's expression grew uncomfortable. That's the complicated part. Her cooperation has been invaluable, and her attorney is pushing for a reduced sentence based on duress and coercion. How reduced? 10 to 15 years, with possibility of parole in 7. Damon considered this. 7 years would make Emma 13 when her mother was released, old enough to decide for herself whether she wanted contact. There's something else, Stewart continued. We've identified 3 more criminal networks using similar methods. Your case broke open an entire ecosystem of organized family fraud. The Justice Department wants to offer you a consulting contract. What kind of consulting? Helping other victims, developing countermeasures, training investigators. The pay is substantial, and it would allow you to prevent what happened to Emma from happening to other children. The offer was tempting. Damon had always found satisfaction in protecting people, and this would give him a platform to do it systematically. I'll consider it. After Stewart left, Damon found Emma in her playroom, working on a puzzle. She looked up as he entered, her face bright with innocent happiness. Daddy, are you sad about something? Why do you ask? You have your thinking face on, the one you get when you're solving problems. Damon sat beside her on the floor. I was offered a new job. It would help other families who had bad things happen to them, like what happened to us. Similar things. Emma considered this seriously. Would it help other kids like me? Yes. Then you should do it. Kids shouldn't be hurt by grown-ups. The simple moral clarity of a 6-year-old put the decision in perspective. Damon had the resources, skills, and motivation to prevent other families from experiencing what they'd endured. You're right. I should do it. That evening, after Emma was asleep, Damon stood in his study looking at a wall of photographs. Images of the victims Herman Butler's network had targeted over the years. 15 families destroyed, from men murdered, dozens of children traumatized. His own experience had been terrible, but it had also given him the tools to ensure justice was served. Not just legal justice, but the kind of comprehensive consequences that would deter future predators. He thought about Christine, alone in her cell, finally understanding the full cost of her choices. About Gerard Hancock, facing decades in maximum security. About Herman Butler, whose heart had finally given out under the weight of his crimes. They'd thought they were hunting him, but in the end, he'd been the predator. The skills that had made him successful in private security, patience, planning, ruthless execution, had served him well in personal warfare. His phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Mr. Lynch, my name is Sarah Chun. My husband was murdered by people who sound like the ones who targeted you. Agent Stewart gave me your number. Can you help? Damon smiled grimly as he typed his response. I'll be in touch tomorrow. We'll make sure they pay for what they did. The hunt never really ended. It just found new prey. Chapter 9. The New Order. 1 year after the hospital discovery that changed everything, Damon stood before a Senate subcommittee in Washington, D.C., presenting his report on organized family fraud networks. The past 12 months had transformed him from victim to advocate, and his consulting work with the FBI had helped dismantle criminal operations in 7 states. Senator Joan Randolph, the subcommittee chair, reviewed his findings with obvious concern. Mr. Lynch, your testimony suggests these networks are far more sophisticated than previously understood. Yes, Senator. They operate like intelligence agencies, recruiting assets, establishing long-term deep cover, conducting systematic surveillance. The network that targeted my family had been operational for over a decade and had generated an estimated $40 million in stolen assets. And the human cost? Damon's expression hardened. 17 confirmed deaths. 32 children psychologically traumatized. Hundreds of families financially destroyed. These aren't opportunistic criminals. They're predators who've industrialized betrayal. After the hearing, Damon flew back to Denver, where Emma waited with Rebecca Hall at their new home in Greenwood Village. The old house held too many painful memories. This one was a fresh start, equipped with state-of-the-art security systems. How was Washington? Emma asked as they sat down for dinner. At 7, she was developing into a remarkably perceptive child, perhaps aged by her experiences but not broken by them. Productive. We convinced some important people to take these crimes seriously. Does that mean other kids won't get hurt? Fewer kids will get hurt. We can't prevent all bad things, but we can make them harder to do. Emma nodded solemnly. Good. Nobody should have their ear hurt like mine was. Later that evening, Damon received a video call from Agent Stewart. Got some news on the Christine situation. Good or bad? Depends on your perspective. She's agreed to testify against 3 more networks we've identified. Full cooperation in exchange for a transfer to minimum security. Timeline for release. Still 7 years minimum. But Damon, there's something else. She's been writing to Emma. Damon's jaw tightened. I told the prison. The letters aren't being delivered. They're being held per your instructions. But she's written over 50 letters in the past 6 months. Her counselor says it's part of her therapy process. What do they say? Apologies mostly. Stories about Emma as a baby. Expressions of regret. Nothing manipulative or inappropriate. Damon considered this development. Part of him wanted to ensure Christine never had contact with Emma again. But another part recognized that Emma might someday want to understand her mother's perspective. Keep holding them. When Emma's older, if she asks, I'll consider sharing them selectively. Fair enough. Oh, and Damon, the consulting contract we discussed? State Department is interested in expanding it internationally. Seems these family fraud networks are operating in Europe and Asia too. The scope continued to expand. What had started as personal revenge was becoming a crusade against an entire criminal ecosystem. That night, as Damon tucked Emma into bed, she asked the question that had become routine. Tell me about Mommy when she was good. It was a ritual they developed with Emma's therapist, balancing the reality of Christine's crimes with acknowledgement that she had once been capable of love. Before you were born, Mommy and I went to Paris for our anniversary. She spent hours in the Louvre, looking at paintings. She said art helped her understand beauty in the world. Was she really bad then? But did she become bad later? The question was becoming more sophisticated as Emma grew older. I think she was always capable of bad choices, but being your mommy brought out the good in her. That's why you're so special. You help someone be better than they naturally were. But not better enough to keep me safe. No, not better enough for that. Emma was quiet for a moment. I'm glad you kept me safe, Daddy. I always will, Princess. That's my job. As Emma drifted off to sleep, Damon reflected on the transformation his life had undergone. A year ago, he'd been a successful businessman with a seemingly perfect family. Now he was a widower by choice, a single father by necessity, and a crusader by calling. His phone buzzed with an encrypted message from Frederick Dodson. New network identified in Miami. 3 families targeted. Request immediate consultation. Damon smiled grimly as he typed his response. En route tomorrow. Forward all intelligence. The hunt continued. It would always continue. But now he wasn't just protecting his own family. He was protecting families he'd never met, children he'd never see, people who would never know how close they'd come to destruction. In destroying his enemies, Damon had discovered his true purpose. He was no longer just a businessman who'd been betrayed. He was a guardian who understood that some people were predators, and predators only understood one language. Overwhelming force applied without mercy or hesitation. His daughter was safe. His fortune was restored. His enemies were dead or imprisoned. But most importantly, he learned the truth about himself. Damon Lynch was not a man who forgave. He was not a man who forgot. He was a man who ensured that betrayal carried consequences so severe that others would think twice before targeting the innocent. The war against those who preyed on families would never end. But for the first time in his life, Damon Lynch was exactly where he belonged, hunting monsters who disguise themselves as human beings. Emma slept peacefully in her secure room, protected by systems and people who would die before letting harm reach her. And in his study, her father planned the next phase of a campaign that would make the predators of the world understand a simple truth. Touch a child, destroy a family, betray the innocent, and face the consequences without mercy, without escape, and without hope of redemption. The hunt never ended. It only found new prey. And there you have it. Another story comes to an end. What did you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoy this story, consider joining our community by subscribing. It means the world to us. For more stories like this one, check out the recommended videos on screen. And I'll see you there. Welcome back to another episode of Infidelity Tales Lab. We're thankful for your continued viewership. Before we begin, tell us, where in the world are you watching from? We love knowing our global reach. Now, let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1, Blood Ties. Russell Boyd knew death like an old friend. 15 years in Special Forces had taught him to recognize its approach, the stillness before chaos, the weight of watching eyes. He'd felt that same heaviness in the air when he returned home after his 4th deployment. His wife Adrienne's embrace felt rehearsed when he walked through the door of their modest Virginia home. Their son Travis, now 14, hung back in the hallway, something guarded in his eyes that hadn't been there in the video calls. "Welcome home, soldier," Adrienne said, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. Russell noticed the unfamiliar earrings, the subtle change in her perfume. "Good to be back," he lied, setting down his duffel. Something was wrong in his house. He could feel it in his bones. That night, Russell unpacked while Adrienne made dinner. As he stored his gear in the closet, he discovered a man's watch tucked beneath her sweaters. Not his, not something he'd ever seen before. He pocketed it without a word, his mind already calculating, assessing. The dinner conversation was strained. Adrienne talked about her new job at the real estate office, about Travis's school, about the neighbors. Russell nodded, but he was watching Travis, who barely touched his food. "Everything okay, son?" Russell asked. Travis looked up, then quickly away. "Yeah, fine. Just homework stress." Russell didn't push. He'd learned patience in Afghanistan. Information came to those who waited. Later that week, Russell followed Adrienne to what she claimed was a meeting with clients. Instead, she drove to an upscale restaurant across town. Through the window, Russell watched her embrace a tall man with a military bearing. The man wore an expensive suit, but Russell recognized the posture, the situational awareness. This was someone who had served. A quick license plate check through an old Army contact revealed the man was Liam Reynolds, former Marine Corps, now working for a private security firm with government contracts. The same firm that provided security for the military base where Russell was stationed. The pieces started falling into place, but Russell needed more information. He needed to understand the full scope of what he was facing before he made his move. He installed small cameras in the house, set up monitoring software on the family devices. Within days, he had his confirmation, text messages, calls, photos. Adrienne and Reynolds had been seeing each other for over a year. But there was something else concerning him. References to Russell's unit, to his deployment schedule, to mission details that should have been classified. Then came mentions of a big score and retirement plan. Reynolds was pumping Adrienne for information, using her to get to something valuable. Russell's last deployment had involved securing a shipment of specialized military hardware. The convoy routes, the security protocols, all information that Reynolds seemed desperately interested in. Russell watched his son growing more withdrawn each day. The boy knew something, but fear kept him silent. "Travis," Russell said one evening, finding his son alone in the backyard. "You know you can tell me anything, right? Anything at all." Travis looked at his father, his eyes haunted. "I can't, Dad. I just can't." Russell nodded, placing a hand on his son's shoulder. "When you're ready, then." That night, Russell heard Travis crying in his room. He stood outside the door, listening, his hand on the knob. Then he heard Travis whisper into his phone, "I can't keep doing this, Liam. He's my dad." Russell's blood ran cold. Reynolds had gotten to his son, too. Chapter 2, Shadows of Betrayal. Russell began mapping the connections between Reynolds and his wife, discovering a network that extended beyond just an affair. Reynolds had 3 brothers, all former military, all now working for various security contractors. Phone records showed regular contact between Adrian and 2 of the brothers, Derek and Cole Reynolds. When Russell mentioned running into an old friend who now worked private security, Adrian's reaction was revealing. A moment of panic quickly masked, followed by probing questions about what the friend had said. "Just catching up," Russell told her, watching her shoulders relax. "Might look into that line of work myself when my contract's up next year." "Really?" Adrian said, her voice too casual. "I thought you were career military." "Time to think about the future," Russell replied, studying her face. "Make some real money for a change." That night, he found her on the phone in the bathroom, whispering urgently. "He knows something," she was saying. "No, I don't think he knows about us, but he mentioned private security. We need to move faster." Russell began backtracking through his last deployment records. His unit had been tasked with escorting an unmarked shipment from a research facility to a secure location. The official manifest listed electronic equipment, but Russell had been in the service long enough to recognize when he was moving something that didn't officially exist. Whatever it was valuable enough for Reynolds to orchestrate an elaborate scheme to get to it. Valuable enough to turn Russell's wife against him, to manipulate his son. Russell discovered that Reynolds had been dishonorably discharged from the Marines 5 years earlier for selling classified information. His brothers had all left their respective branches under similar clouds. Now, they operated in the shadowy world between legitimate security work and outright mercenary activities. What troubled Russell most was Travis's involvement. The boy was withdrawn, constantly checking his phone, jumping when Russell entered a room. One afternoon, Russell came home early to find Travis hurriedly closing his laptop. "School project?" Russell asked. "Yeah," Travis mumbled, not meeting his eyes. That night, Russell accessed Travis's laptop remotely. What he found chilled him. Reynolds had been messaging Travis for months, at first posing as a friend, then as a mentor, gradually extracting information about Russell's schedule, his habits, his deployment details. Recently, the messages had taken a darker turn, with thinly veiled threats toward Travis and Russell if the boy didn't cooperate. Russell's jaw clenched as he read the latest exchange. "Reynolds, your mom and I need that info about your dad's next convoy route. It's important." "Travis, I told you, he doesn't talk about work with me." "Reynolds, ask him. Make up a school project. Say you're proud of him. Whatever works. We need to know." "Travis, what are you going to do?" "Reynolds, nothing bad if everything goes according to plan. But if it doesn't, remember what I told you about what happens to families of soldiers who get in our way." Russell closed the laptop, his decision made. Reynolds and his brothers were planning something during his next convoy duty, likely an ambush to steal whatever they were transporting. They were using Travis as their informant, threatening him to ensure his cooperation. The next morning, Russell made a call to his commanding officer, requesting a meeting off base. Major Harvey Wilson had known Russell for 12 years, through 3 combat tours. "What's on your mind, Boyd?" he asked as they sat in a diner 20 miles from a base. "Need to talk about the next transport duty," Russell said quietly. "I think there may be a security breach." Wilson's expression hardened. "What kind of breach?" "Personal," Russell replied. "My wife's been seeing someone. Ex-Marine named Liam Reynolds." Wilson's coffee cup paused halfway to his lips. "Reynolds? You're sure?" Russell nodded. "He's been asking questions about my deployment schedules, convoy routes. Getting to my son, too." Wilson set his cup down carefully. "Reynolds and his brothers have been on our radar. They're suspected of hitting military shipments in 3 states, but we've never been able to prove it. If he's targeting your convoy." He paused. "What exactly does he know?" "That's what I need to find out," Russell said. "And then I need your help to set a trap." Chapter 3. The Warning. The plan was simple but risky. Russell would feed Travis carefully selected information about an upcoming convoy, information that would seem valuable to Reynolds, but would actually lead him and his brothers into a military police ambush. Russell hated using his son this way, but he needed to know how deep Travis was involved, whether the boy was a willing participant or a victim of manipulation and threats. He casually mentioned the convoy to Travis over breakfast. Big day, next Friday. Escorting some fancy new tech to Fort Benning. Travis's spoon froze halfway to his mouth. What kind of tech? Can't say much, Russell said, watching his son closely. But it's important enough that I'll be running point. Route 29 most of the way. Standard stuff. Travis nodded, his eyes darting to his phone beside his plate. That night, Russell monitored Travis's messages to Reynolds. Travis, Dad's leading a convoy next Friday. Route 29 to Fort Benning. He says it's fancy new tech. Reynolds, good work. Any details on timing or security arrangements? Travis, he didn't say, but he's running point whatever that means. Reynolds, it means he's in the lead vehicle. Perfect. Your mom and I appreciate this. Travis, once this is done, we'll be set. You, me, and your mom can start over somewhere new. Reynolds' response confirmed what Russell suspected. They were planning to hit the convoy, and Adrian was fully complicit. They were even planning to take Travis away afterward. The following day, Russell met with Major Wilson and a small team of trusted officers to finalize their plan. They would set up a decoy convoy while the real shipment took an alternate route. Reynolds and his brothers would find themselves walking into a trap. But that night, everything changed. Russell was in his home office when Travis appeared in the doorway, pale and shaking. Dad, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. I need to tell you something. Russell gestured for him to come in, closing the door behind him. What is it, son? Travis broke down, tears streaming down his face. I've been talking to Mom's friend, Liam. He made me tell him things about you, about your work. I know, Russell said quietly. Travis looked up, shocked. You know, I've known for a while. I want to see how far it would go, what they were planning. They're going to hurt you, Dad, Travis said, his voice cracking. Liam and his brothers. They want whatever you're transporting next week. They made me help them. Russell pulled his son into an embrace. It's okay. I got a plan. The convoy information I mentioned was fake. We're setting a trap for them. Travis stiffened in his arms. No, Dad, you don't understand. They know you suspect something. Mom told Liam you've been asking questions. They're changing their plan. They're coming here tonight. They're going to make me call you while you're on patrol, tell you something happened at home, so you'll come back alone. Russell's mind raced. If Reynolds knew about the trap, then the whole operation was compromised. Worse, they were bringing the fight to his home, where Travis was. When? Russell demanded. Tonight. Mom left an hour ago to meet Liam. His brothers are supposed to come here at midnight. I'm supposed to call you at 12:30 after your patrol starts. Russell checked his watch. 11:15 p.m. He had 45 minutes. Listen to me carefully, Russell said, gripping Travis by the shoulders. This is what we're going to do. By midnight, Russell had contacted Major Wilson, explaining the change in situation. Then he positioned himself in the shadows of the living room, his service weapon ready. He had sent Travis to hide in the basement panic room he'd installed years ago, with strict instructions not to come out until Russell came for him. At 12:10 a.m., Russell's phone vibrated with a text from his security system. 3 men approaching the back door. Through the camera feed on his phone, he recognized Derek and Cole Reynolds, along with a third man he didn't know. They moved with military precision, checking sight lines, communicating with hand signals. They thought they were dealing with an empty house, expecting Travis to be the only one home. At 12:30, Russell's phone rang. It was Travis. Go ahead, son, Russell said quietly. Say the lines like we practiced. Travis's voice shook convincingly. Dad, Mom's boyfriend says he knows your convoy route. His brothers are waiting to ambush you. They made me call to lure you. I'm already home, son, Russell whispered, watching the 3 men enter through the back door, weapons drawn. There was silence on the line as Travis processed what this meant. The intruders never saw Russell. 15 years of special operations had taught him patience, precision, and the ability to move like a ghost. The first man went down silently, a precise strike rendering him unconscious. The second turned just in time to see Russell before a well-placed blow incapacitated him. The third, Cole Reynolds, managed to raise his weapon, but Russell was faster, disarming him with a brutal efficiency that left Cole's arm broken in 2 places. Within minutes, all 3 were zip-tied and unconscious on the living room floor. Russell called Major Wilson. "Situation contained," he reported. 3 suspects in custody at my residence. "No casualties." He paused. "But Reynolds and my wife are still out there, and they know something's wrong when their team doesn't report in." "Stay put," Wilson ordered. "We've got patrols looking for Reynolds now. We'll find him." After ending the call, Russell went to the basement to get Travis. The boy was huddled in the panic room, shaking. "It's over," Russell assured him. "You're safe." "What about Mom?" Travis asked, his voice small. Russell's expression hardened. "Your mother made her choice." As they climbed the stairs back to the main floor, Travis stopped suddenly. "Dad, there's something else I need to tell you." Before he could continue, Russell's phone rang. It was Major Wilson. "Boyd, we got a problem. Reynolds escaped our patrol. He's in the wind, and we can't locate your wife either." Russell looked at Travis, whose face had gone pale. "What is it, son?" he asked, his voice gentle despite the urgency of the situation. "Mom and Liam," Travis said. "They have a place. A cabin in the mountains. She took me there once, made me promise not to tell you. Said it was her special place where she could think." Russell nodded, his jaw tight. "Can you remember how to get there?" As Travis described the location, Russell knew the real battle was just beginning. Reynolds would be desperate now. His brothers captured, his plan in ruins. A desperate man was unpredictable, dangerous. "We need to go," Russell said, helping Travis to his feet. "Right now." Chapter 4, Hunting Grounds. The mountain roads were treacherous in the pre-dawn darkness. Russell drove with methodical precision, his mind calculating contingencies. Beside him, Travis directed their route toward the secluded cabin where Adrian and Reynolds had created their secret retreat. "How long have you known about this place?" Russell asked, his voice carefully neutral. Travis stared out the window at the passing trees. "Mom started taking me there about 6 months ago. At first, she said it was just for hiking trips. Then Liam started showing up." He paused. "I didn't want to go anymore after that, but she insisted. So we needed to bond with him." Russell's hands tightened on the steering wheel. "And what did Liam talk to you about during these trips?" "At first, normal stuff. Sports, school. Then he started asking about you. When you'd call from deployment, what he would talk about. He made it seem like he just wanted to know what kind of father you were." Travis's voice cracked. "I didn't realize what he was doing until he started threatening me." "Threatening how?" "He showed me pictures of guys he said crossed him. Said one word from him, and the same could happen to you. Or to me." Travis looked down at his hands. "That's when I started telling him things." "I'm sorry, Dad. This isn't on you," Russell said firmly. "Reynolds is a predator. He targeted you because of me. None of this is your fault." As they approached the turnoff of the cabin, Russell killed the headlights and pulled over. "Stay in the car," he instructed, checking his weapon. "Lock the doors. If anyone but me approaches, use this." He handed Travis a small canister. "Pepper spray. Aim for the eyes, then run into the woods. Head downhill, find a road." "What are you going to do?" Travis asked, fear evident in his voice. Russell's expression was unreadable. "Reconnaissance first. I need to know what we're dealing with." The cabin sat in a small clearing, a rustic 2-story structure with a wraparound porch. A black SUV was parked outside, Reynolds' vehicle. Russell circled the perimeter, moving silently through the underbrush. Through a window, he could see Adrian pacing in the main room, her face etched with worry. Reynolds was nowhere in sight. Russell positioned himself near the back door, listening. Voices drifted through an open window. "They should have called by now," Adrian was saying, her voice tight with panic. Something went wrong. Reynolds' voice, controlled but tense. Travis was supposed to make the call at 12:30. What if Russell figured it out? What if he hurt Travis? Reynolds' laugh was cold. "Your husband's a soldier, not a monster. He wouldn't hurt his own kid, even if he knew the boy was setting him up." "You don't know Russell," Adrian said quietly. "Not really. I know enough," Reynolds replied. "I know he's predictable, follows orders, plays by the rules. That's why this was supposed to work." "So what now?" Adrian asked. "Now we adapt. My brothers will handle themselves if they got caught. They know the drill. Say nothing. Ask for a lawyer. By the time the military sorts through the red tape, we'll be long gone. And the money? The buyers are expecting delivery next week. We'll have to tell them there's been a delay. Once things cool down, we can still make this work. The intel you provided about the classified tech is too valuable to pass up. Russell had heard enough. Adrian wasn't just having an affair. She was actively selling military secrets to Reynolds, who was apparently planning to sell them to foreign buyers. This wasn't just about a convoy ambush anymore. It was treason. He was preparing to move when he felt, rather than heard, someone approach from behind. He turned just as a heavy blow struck the side of his head, sending him sprawling. Cole Reynolds stood over him, blood caking the side of his face, but very much not in custody. Looking for someone, Boyd? Russell's vision swam as he tried to reach for his weapon, but a kick sent it skittering away into the underbrush. Zip ties aren't much of a challenge for guys with our training, Cole said, hauling Russell to his feet. Though I gotta admit, you got the drop on us at your house. Wasn't expecting you to be home. He marched Russell toward the cabin at gunpoint. Liam, look what I found prowling around outside. The cabin door burst open, and Liam Reynolds emerged, his expression shifting from surprise to cold calculation at the sight of Russell. Boyd, I should have known you'd track us here. He glanced past Russell toward the dark woods. Where's the boy? Safe, Russell replied, his voice steady despite the throbbing in his head. Far away from you. Reynolds studied him for a moment, then nodded to Cole. Bring him inside. We need to have a chat. Adrienne's face went pale when she saw Russell, her hand flying to her mouth. Russell, how did you? Travis told me about your little love nest, Russell said, his voice devoid of emotion. Seems like there's a lot you've been keeping from me, Adrienne. Reynolds shoved Russell into a chair, securing his hands behind him with more zip ties. Family reunion. How touching. You won't get away with this, Russell said calmly. Major Wilson knows I'm here. If I don't check in within the hour, this place will be swarming with MPs. Reynolds laughed. Nice try, Boyd. We both know special forces operators like you don't call for backup that easily. You came alone, hoping to play hero. He leaned in close. Where's the boy, really? Is he outside? In your car. Russell maintained eye contact, his expression neutral. He's with Wilson, giving a full statement about everything you've done. The threats, the manipulation, the planned ambush. For the first time, uncertainty flickered across Reynolds' face. He's lying, Adrian said quickly. Travis wouldn't betray us like that. Betray you? Russell's laugh was bitter. That's rich, coming from a woman who's been selling military secrets while her husband was deployed. Reynolds straightened up, his composure returning. It doesn't matter. We're leaving tonight, with or without the boy. The buyers are still interested in what we can provide. The intelligence Adrian stole for you is already compromised, Russell said. Wilson's team is changing all the security protocols as we speak. There will be other opportunities, Reynolds replied with a cold smile. Your wife has been very helpful in establishing connections within base. We just need to get to our extraction point. Cole moved to the window, peering out into the darkness. Speaking of which, we should move. Dawn's coming soon. Reynolds nodded. Pack the essentials. We're out in 5. As Reynolds and Cole began gathering equipment, Adrian approached Russell, her eyes pleading. Russell, please, she whispered. This got out of hand. I never meant for things to go this far. Russell looked at her, really looked at her, for the first time since entering the cabin. The woman he had loved, the mother of his child, now a stranger willing to betray not just her marriage vows, but her country. When did you stop loving me, Adrian? He asked quietly. Her eyes dropped. I don't know. Maybe after your second deployment, when you came back, different, distant. Liam made me feel seen, appreciated. And selling military secrets? Was that also about feeling appreciated? She flinched. The money was good. We were drowning in debt after my father's medical bills. Liam said nobody would get hurt. People always get hurt, Adrian. That's the one guarantee in this life. A noise outside drew everyone's attention. Reynolds moved to the window, gun raised. What was that? He demanded. Before anyone could answer, the cabin was plunged into darkness as the power was cut. Cole, Check the breaker, Reynolds commanded, switching on a tactical flashlight. On it, Cole replied, moving toward the back door. The moment Cole opened the door, a canister came flying through, bouncing across the floor before erupting in a cloud of tear gas. Russell, anticipating the attack, had already started working on his restraints, dislocating his thumb to slip one hand free. As Reynolds and Adrian began coughing and staggering in the gas, Russell lunged forward, tackling Reynolds to the ground. The two men fought brutally in the darkness, both trained killers with years of combat experience. Reynolds landed a powerful blow to Russell's kidneys, but Russell countered with an elbow strike that shattered Reynolds' nose. Outside, Cole's shout was cut short by the sound of a scuffle, followed by silence. Russell gained the upper hand, pinning Reynolds beneath him. "It's over," he growled, his hand closing around Reynolds' throat. "Not quite," Reynolds gasped, his hand reaching for something in his waistband. Russell saw the glint of a blade too late. The knife slashed across his ribs, cutting deep. He rolled away, hand pressed to the wound as Reynolds staggered to his feet. "You're good, Boyd," Reynolds admitted, wiping blood from his face. "But I didn't survive 3 tours in Fallujah by playing fair." Before Reynolds could advance, the front door burst open and armed military police poured in, weapons trained on Reynolds. "Drop the weapon. On the ground now," their leader shouted. Reynolds, calculating his odds, slowly lowered the knife and knelt with his hands behind his head. As the MPs secured Reynolds and the still coughing Adrian, Major Wilson entered, helping Russell to his feet. "Cutting a bit close, weren't you?" Russell said through gritted teeth, blood seeping between his fingers. Wilson grimaced. "Your son called it in. Smart kid. Decided not to stay in the car like you told him." Russell looked past Wilson to where Travis stood in the doorway, his young face a mixture of relief and trauma. "Travis," Russell called. "You okay?" Travis nodded, unable to speak as he watched his mother being handcuffed. "Medic!" Wilson shouted, noticing Russell's wound. "We need a medic here." As a medic approached to treat him, Russell kept his eyes on Travis. "It's going to be okay, son," he said, though he wasn't sure himself if that was true. Chapter 5. Broken Trust. The military hospital was quiet at 3 in the morning. Russell sat on the edge of his bed, ignoring the pain from his 20 stitches as he read through the preliminary report Wilson had brought him. Liam and Cole Reynolds were in military custody, facing charges of conspiracy, attempted murder of a federal officer, espionage, and a dozen other violations. Derek Reynolds and the third man from Russell's house were also in custody. Adrian was being held as a material witness and co-conspirator. "How's Travis holding up?" Russell asked, looking up from the report. Wilson sighed, running a hand through his thinning hair. "Child Services has him temporarily. He's been asking for you. The psychologist says he's in shock, but physically he's unharmed." Russell nodded, his jaw tight. "I want him back with me as soon as possible." "You'll need to give a full statement first," Wilson said. "The JAG office has questions about those 3 men in your house. Self-defense seems clear, but they need details." "They came to kill me, Wilson. What more do they need to know? It's procedure, you know that. Especially given the severity of their injuries." Wilson paused. "Cole Reynolds claims you broke his arm after he was already subdued." Russell's expression didn't change. "He's lying. He resisted, threatened my son. I used necessary force to protect my home." Wilson studied him for a moment. "The doctors say Cole's arm was broken in 3 places. His hand may never fully recover. Are you here as my friend or as part of the investigation?" "Both," Wilson admitted. "I need to know what happened, Russell. The full story." Russell set the report aside. "They came into my home armed, planning to use my son as bait to lure me to my death. They were working with my wife to steal classified technology and sell it to foreign buyers. What happened in my house was the minimal force required to ensure my son's safety." Wilson held his gaze before finally nodding. "I'll make sure that's clear in my report." He stood to leave, then hesitated. "There's something else you should know. Reynolds isn't talking, but Adrian is. She's offering information in exchange for leniency." "What kind of information?" "Names of the buyers. Details about other operations Reynolds and his brothers were involved in." And Wilson looked uncomfortable. She's claiming she was coerced. Says Reynolds threatened her and Travis if she didn't cooperate. Russell's laugh was hollow. She took my son to their love nest for months. She stole classified information from my personal files. That sound like coercion to you? No, Wilson admitted. But her lawyer is spinning a compelling narrative. Vulnerable military wife, lonely during husband's deployments, manipulated by a predatory ex-soldier. Will it work? Russell asked, his voice dangerously quiet. It might reduce her sentence, but she's still looking at serious time. Wilson headed for the door. Get some rest. I'll have Travis brought here tomorrow once your statement is processed. After Wilson left, Russell sat in the darkened hospital room, thinking about Travis. The boy had watched his mother betraying his father, had been threatened and manipulated by Reynolds, and now had witnessed violence most adults never experienced. How did someone come back from that kind of trauma? The next morning, a JAG officer took Russell's statement. He recounted the events clinically, unemotionally, presenting the facts without embellishment. The officer seemed satisfied, informing Russell that based on the evidence and Major Wilson's recommendation, no charges will be filed regarding the confrontation in his home. By afternoon, Travis arrived, escorted by a social worker. The boy looked smaller somehow, diminished by the events of the past days. "Dad," he said, his voice breaking as Russell embraced him. "I'm here," Russell assured him. "I've got you." The social worker gave them privacy, and for a while, they just sat together in silence. Finally, Travis spoke. "Is Mom going to prison?" Russell considered his words carefully. "Yes. What she did was very serious." "Because of the affair?" "No. Because she and Reynolds were stealing military secrets to sell to other countries. That's called treason, and it's one of the most serious crimes there is." Travis nodded, processing this. "She said she did it for us, for a better life." Russell felt anger flare, but kept his voice steady. "That was a lie, Travis. We didn't need money that badly. She did it for herself and for Reynolds. What's going to happen to me?" "You'll stay with me," Russell said firmly. "We'll get through this together." Travis looked down at his hands. "I told them things about you, about your work. I helped them. You were threatened and manipulated by adults who should have protected you. None of this is your fault. But if I had told you sooner, then Reynolds might have hurt you," Russell interrupted. "You survived, Travis. You did what you had to do, and when the moment came, you made the right choice. You warned me. You called Major Wilson when I told you to stay in the car. You saved my life." Tears filled Travis's eyes. "I was so scared." Russell pulled him into another embrace. "I know, but you were brave when it counted." As Travis cried against his shoulder, Russell made a silent vow. Reynolds and his brothers would pay for what they'd done to his son. Adrian would face justice for her betrayal. But that wasn't enough. There were still the buyers, the people willing to purchase stolen American military technology. People who would have benefited from his death and his son's trauma. They would pay too. All of them. 2 weeks later, Russell and Travis moved into a new house on the other side of town. The old house held too many painful memories, and Russell wanted a fresh start for both of them. Travis enrolled in a new school, began seeing a therapist specializing in trauma, and slowly, day by day, showed signs of recovery. Russell returned to duty, though he requested a temporary transfer to base operations while he sorted out his personal life. Wilson arranged it, understanding that Russell needed time to be there for Travis. The legal proceedings moved forward. Liam and his brothers were denied bail, deemed flight risks due to their connections overseas. Adrienne's cooperation earned her a separate detention facility, but her plea deal was still being negotiated. Russell visited her once, a month after the arrest. She sat across from him in the visitation room, the orange jumpsuit making her look pale and drawn. "Thank you for coming," she said. "How's Travis?" "Healing," Russell replied. "No thanks to you." She flinched. "I never wanted him involved. That was Liam's idea, but you allowed it. You watched our son being threatened and manipulated, and you did nothing." "I was in too deep by then," she said, her eyes pleading. "Liam had evidence of my involvement. If I tried to back out, he would have exposed me. So you chose him over your own son's safety." She looked away. "I made terrible choices. I know that. Your lawyer says you're cooperating." Naming names, She nodded. It's the only way to reduce my sentence. I know I'm going to prison, Russell. I just don't want to spend the rest of my life there. Who were the buyers? Russell asked, his voice calm despite the rage simmering beneath the surface. My lawyer advised me not to discuss case details with anyone, she said carefully. Russell leaned forward. I'm not asking as part of the case, Adrian. I'm asking as the man whose life you tried to destroy. I deserve to know who was willing to pay for my death. She hesitated, then sighed. A consortium. 3 major players. A Russian arms dealer named Petrov, a Chinese technology firm operating through shell companies, and a domestic contractor trying to get ahead on the bidding for next-gen military tech. Names, Russell pressed. I can't, Russell. If we got back that I told you. She shuddered. These people have long reaches, even into prisons. Russell sat back, his expression unreadable. You should have thought about dangerous associates before you got into bed with Reynolds. I know you'll never forgive me, she said quietly. But please, for Travis's sake, don't let your anger consume you. He needs his father. Don't you dare use our son to manipulate me, Russell said, his voice deadly quiet. You lost that right when you put his life at risk. He stood to leave, but Adrian called after him. Russell, wait. There's something else you should know. She lowered her voice. Reynolds had other partners, people even he was afraid of. They don't know I've given up his name, but if they find out, they might come looking to tie up loose ends. Are you saying my son is still in danger? She nodded, her eyes fearful. Be careful. Watch over him. As Russell left the detention center, he knew Adrian was trying to manipulate him again, using concern for Travis to gain his sympathy. But what if there was truth to her warning? Reynolds' operation had seemed sophisticated, well-funded. There could easily be other players in the shadows, people who had invested in the intelligence Adrian and Reynolds were selling. People who might not appreciate the operation being shut down. Chapter 6. Ghosts and Shadows. Russell established new routines for himself and Travis, carefully designed to appear normal while incorporating security measures. Different routes to school each day. Regular check-ins. A new security system of the house. Travis didn't complain. The recent events had made him hyper-vigilant, aware of threats in a way no 14-year-old should be. 3 months passed without incident. The Reynolds brothers remained in custody, awaiting trial. Adrian accepted a plea deal, 15 years in exchange for her full cooperation. The news reported the disruption of an espionage ring targeting military technology, but the details remained classified. Russell kept digging. Using contacts from his special forces days, calling in favors, he began mapping the network behind Reynolds' operation. Adrian had mentioned 3 main buyers. Russell identified 2. Viktor Petrov, a Russian arms dealer operating through proxies in Eastern Europe, and Tech Fusion, a Chinese firm with ties to their military. The 3rd buyer, the domestic contractor, proved more elusive. Russell suspected it was one of the major defense corporations, but there were dozens of possibilities, all with the resources and motivation to acquire advanced military technology through back channels. Wilson provided what information he could without compromising the ongoing investigation. The FBI has taken over that aspect, he told Russell during one of their regular meetings. They're following money trails, communications. It's slow work. Too slow, Russell replied. If these people decide to tie up loose ends, Travis could be in danger. We have no evidence they're even aware of Travis's role, Wilson pointed out. As far as most people know, you discovered your wife's affair and the plot through your own investigation. Travis is just a victim in the official narrative. Reynolds knows the truth. So do his brothers. If they talk to the right people. Wilson sighed. I can assign a protective detail if you're really concerned. Russell shook his head. No. More people means more visibility, more opportunities for leaks. We keep this contained. That night, as Russell was checking the security feeds before bed, he noticed a car passing their house for the 3rd time in an hour. Nothing obvious, a dark sedan with tinted windows, moving at legal speed. But Russell recognized surveillance when he saw it. He activated a secondary security protocol on his phone, sending the car's license plate to a private investigator he'd hired, former Army intelligence, someone who knew how to be discreet. The response came an hour later. The car was registered to a shell company tied to Meridian Defense Solutions, one of the largest military contractors in the country. The third buyer. They had found him. Russell didn't sleep that night, instead planning contingencies. He couldn't go to the authorities without revealing that he'd been conducting his own unauthorized investigation. Besides, companies like Meridian had former generals on their boards, political connections at the highest levels. The system might not protect him or Travis if Meridian decided they were liabilities. The next morning, he called Travis's school to report him sick, then took him to a cabin owned by a former teammate, 50 miles away in the mountains. "What's going on, Dad?" Travis asked as they drove, clearly unsettled by the sudden trip. "Just being cautious," Russell replied. "Remember how we talked about situations requiring extra security?" Travis nodded, his expression serious beyond his years. "Is it because of Mom or Liam?" "In a way. Some people connected to them might be watching us. This is just temporary until I can resolve the situation." At the cabin, Russell set up security measures while Travis settled in. The place was remote, defensible, stocked with supplies. His teammate had used it as a safe house during his private security days. "You'll stay here with Brian," Russell explained, introducing Travis to his former teammate. "He'll keep you safe while I take care of some business in town." "You're leaving?" Travis asked, panic edging into his voice. Russell knelt to meet his son's eyes. "Just for a few days. Brian is one of the best soldiers I ever served with. You'll be safer with him than with me right now. Why can't we both stay here?" "Because I need to make sure these people understand that coming after my family is a mistake they won't live to repeat." Travis studied his father's face. "You're going after them, aren't you? The people Mom and Liam were working for." Russell considered lying, then decided against it. Travis had seen too much deception already. "Yes, they need to understand there are consequences." "Will you kill them?" Travis asked, his voice small but steady. Russell placed his hands on his son's shoulders. "I'm going to do whatever is necessary to ensure you're safe. Not just tomorrow or next week, but for good. Can you trust me on this?" After a long moment, Travis nodded. Back in the city, Russell began his operation methodically. The PI had identified the surveillance team as private security contractors working for Meridian Defense Solutions. For men, rotating in shifts, keeping eyes on Russell's house and tracking his movements. Rather than avoiding them, Russell let them follow him, establishing a predictable pattern while gathering information on their procedures. They were professionals, but they weren't special forces. They hadn't been trained to watch for the kind of counter-surveillance techniques Russell employed. Within 3 days, he had identified their command structure, their communications protocols, and most importantly, the location of their local operations center, a nondescript office building owned by another Meridian shell company. On the fourth night, Russell made his move. Dressed in black tactical gear, he accessed the building through a maintenance entrance, bypassing the security system using techniques honed through years of covert operations. The night security guard never saw him coming. A quick, silent takedown with no permanent damage. In the security office, Russell accessed the computer system, downloading files, communications logs, anything that might identify who at Meridian had authorized the operation against him and his family. He found what he needed in an encrypted folder: operation reports, surveillance photos of him and Travis, and most damning of all, communications with someone identified only as director authorizing containment protocols if Russell showed signs of investigating Meridian's connection to Reynolds. Containment protocols. Russell knew what that meant in their world. His and Travis's lives had been conditionally forfeit, pending Meridian's assessment of the threat they posed. As he was preparing to leave, voices in the hallway alerted him to the arrival of the night shift security team. 2 men, from the sound of their conversation, coming to relieve the guard he'd incapacitated. Russell could have slipped away unnoticed. That would have been the prudent move. But these men worked for the organization threatening his son. Prudence wasn't his priority anymore. The security team entered the office to find their colleague unconscious and Russell waiting in the shadows. Their training kicked in. Both reached for their weapons, but Russell was already moving, a ghost in the darkness. The first man went down with a crushed larynx, gasping soundlessly on the floor. The second managed to draw his gun before Russell's strike dislocated his shoulder and sent the weapon clattering away. A precise blow to the temple rendered him unconscious. Russell gathered the fallen weapons, along with the data he'd downloaded, and exited the building as silently as he'd entered. No alarms, no witnesses, nothing to indicate this was anything more than a random break-in. But Russell had left something behind. A small card with a simple message tucked into the pocket of the man with the crushed larynx. It read, "Tell Meridian's director that Russell Boyd sends his regards." This was a warning. There won't be a second one. The next morning, Russell called a number he'd found in the encrypted files. It rang 3 times before being answered. Security operations, a clipped voice stated. "I need to speak with Director Hargrove," Russell said. "Tell him it's Russell Boyd, and this conversation will determine whether his security team lives through the night." A pause, then, "Hold, please." 2 minutes later, a deeper voice came on the line. "Mr. Boyd, you've been busy. Your surveillance team is sloppy, Director Hargrove. Your security protocols are outdated, and your communication security is compromised. I have everything: the connection to Reynolds, the authorization for containment protocols against me and my son." "That's quite an accusation," Hargrove replied, his tone measured. "Do you have any idea who you're dealing with?" "I know exactly who I'm dealing with," Russell said. "The question is whether you understand who you're dealing with. I'm not some civilian you can intimidate or eliminate. I've spent 15 years learning how to hunt and kill people far more dangerous than corporate executives playing at espionage." "What do you want, Boyd?" "A meeting. Just you and me. We need to come to an understanding about my family's continued safety and your company's continued existence." A long pause followed. "The Renaissance Hotel, downtown, room 1242. 1 hour. I'll be there," Russell said. "And Hargrove, if this is a setup, what I did to your security team will seem merciful compared to what comes next." He hung up, checking his weapons one last time before heading to the meeting that would determine whether the threat to Travis ended today or whether Russell would need to dismantle Meridian Defense Solutions piece by bloody piece. Chapter 7. Calculated Risks. The Renaissance Hotel lobby bustled with business travelers and tourists, none noticing the focused intensity of the man who entered at precisely 10 a.m. Russell had arrived 30 minutes early, surveilling the building's entrances and exits, noting security camera placements, identifying hotel staff versus potential operatives. He took the service elevator to the 11th floor, then used the stairs to approach room 1242 from an unexpected direction. The hallway was clear, no obvious security, no housekeeping carts that might conceal personnel. Either Hargrove was supremely confident, or this was an elaborate trap. Russell knocked 3 times, then stepped to the side of the door, hand resting on the concealed weapon at his waist. "It's open," came a voice from inside. Russell entered cautiously, scanning the room in one practice sweep. A suite, expensively furnished. A man in his 60s sat in an armchair by the window, silver-haired, impeccably dressed in a tailored suit. No obvious weapons, no visible security. "Mr. Boyd," the man said, gesturing to the chair opposite him. "I'm Thomas Hargrove. I believe we have matters to discuss." Russell remained standing. "Search protocols first. I'll check you, you check me, then we talk." Hargrove raised an eyebrow, but stood, allowing Russell to conduct a thorough pat-down. Finding no weapons, Russell submitted to the same. Only then did he take the offered seat. "I must admit," Hargrove said, returning to his chair, "your methods are direct. Breaking into one of our facilities, assaulting our personnel. Your personnel were surveilling my home, monitoring my child," Russell replied coldly. "Consider yourselves fortunate I didn't employ more permanent solutions." Hargrove studied him. "You're everything your file suggested. Efficient, ruthless when necessary, protective of your own. My file. Meridian does its homework, Mr. Boyd. When Liam Reynolds approached us with his proposal, we conducted thorough background checks on everyone involved, including you." "Reynolds approached you," Russell said. "Not the other way around." "Correct. He claimed to have access to next-generation military technology through his relationship with your wife. We expressed interest, naturally. Such acquisitions can save years of R&D. Industrial espionage, Russell clarified. Treason. Hargrove waved a dismissive hand. Corporate intelligence gathering. And as for treason, Meridian is an American company. The technology would have remained in American hands, just under our patents rather than the government's. And the Russian and Chinese buyers Reynolds was also dealing with. A flicker of surprise crossed Hargrove's face. If Reynolds was negotiating with foreign entities, that was not part of our arrangement. Your arrangement involved stealing classified technology and eliminating anyone who got in your way, Russell said, leaning forward. Including me, including my 14-year-old son. A misunderstanding, Hargrove said smoothly. The containment protocols were a contingency, not an active directive. Standard procedure when dealing with potential security risks. I have the communications, Hargrove. I know the surveillance team was authorized to contain us if necessary. Only if you demonstrated knowledge of Meridian's involvement, Hargrove admitted. Which, unfortunately, you now have. The atmosphere in the room shifted subtly. Russell tensed, preparing for a hidden attack. Relax, Mr. Boyd, Hargrove said, noting his reaction. If I wanted you eliminated, we wouldn't be having this conversation. Then what do you want? Hargrove sighed, suddenly looking older. Meridian made a miscalculation partnering with Reynolds. His operation was sloppier than we anticipated, his methods more brutal than we would have sanctioned. When we learned he was threatening a child, your son, I personally initiated a review of our involvement. You expect me to believe you developed a conscience? I expect you to understand business, Mr. Boyd. Dead soldiers and traumatized children create investigations, media attention, political fallout. Bad for the bottom line. Russell studied the man, searching for deception. So you're cutting ties with Reynolds? We already have. All communications ceased when he was arrested. As far as Meridian is concerned, we never had contact with him. And my family? The surveillance? A precaution that is no longer necessary, Hargrove said. You have my word that Meridian will maintain its distance from you and your son. Russell laughed humorlessly. Your word means nothing to me. I need guarantees, such as complete cessation of all surveillance, a signed confession detailing Meridian's involvement with Reynolds, to be held by my attorney and released if anything happens to me or my son, and financial compensation for the trauma your company helped inflict on my family. Hargrove considered this. The surveillance can end immediately. The confession is out of the question, too much liability. As for compensation, he paused. What figure did you have in mind? $2 million. In a trust for my son. Extortion, Mr. Boyd. Restitution, Russell corrected. A small price for your company to avoid a scandal that would tank your stock and end your government contracts. Hargrove was silent for a long moment, his expression calculating. Finally, he nodded. $1 million. Transferred to a trust of your choosing. In exchange for your silence regarding Meridian's tangential connection to this unfortunate affair. And what assurance do I have that once I leave this room, you won't simply decide to eliminate the problem permanently? Hargrove reached into his jacket, moving slowly to avoid alarming Russell, and withdrew a thumb drive. This contains evidence of Meridian's involvement in 3 other questionable acquisitions over the past decade. If anything happens to you or your son, this information becomes public. Mutually assured destruction, Mr. Boyd. The foundation of any lasting peace. Russell took the drive, considering the offer. He didn't trust Hargrove or Meridian, but the arrangement made a certain cold, pragmatic sense. Corporations like Meridian operated on risk assessment. If the risk of eliminating Russell outweighed the risk of paying him off, they would choose the latter. One more condition, Russell said. Reynolds and his brothers. I want them to understand that any deal they might have had with Meridian is finished. That if they mention your company's name, even once, they won't live to see trial. Hargrove's smile was thin. That could be arranged. Prison populations can be unpredictable. Not good enough, Russell replied. I want to deliver the message personally. That would be highly irregular. They're in military custody, awaiting trial on federal charges. You have the connections to make it happen, Russell said. One visit, supervised if necessary. Hargrove studied him, then nodded slowly. I'll make the arrangements. But understand this, Mr. Boyd. If you harm Reynolds while visiting him, our agreement is void. I don't need to harm him, Russell said. I just need him to understand the consequences of threatening my family. The meeting concluded with handshakes and the exchange of secure contact information. Russell left the hotel the same way he'd entered, watchful for any sign of surveillance or a double cross. There was none. 2 days later, a notification on his secure phone indicated that $1 million had been transferred to a newly created trust in Travis's name. The same day, he received visitor authorization for the military detention facility where Liam Reynolds was being held. Russell returned to the mountain cabin to check on Travis before his visit to Reynolds. The boy was doing better under Brian's watchful eye, sleeping through the night, spending time outdoors, gradually regaining the confidence that Reynolds had stolen from him. Is it over? Travis asked when Russell told him they could return home soon. Almost, Russell replied. There's one more piece to take care of. Then we can start rebuilding. Mom's preliminary hearing is next week, Travis said quietly. Her lawyer called. They want me to testify. Russell froze. Testify about what? About Liam. How he threatened me. Made me do things. Travis looked down. They think it will help Mom's case if I tell the court she was threatened too. Was she? Russell asked carefully. Did you ever see Reynolds threaten your mother the way he threatened you? Travis was silent for a long moment. No, he finally admitted. She seemed happy with him. Until everything fell apart. Russell placed a hand on his son's shoulder. You don't have to testify if you don't want to. And if you do, you only tell the truth. What you saw, what you experienced. Nothing more, nothing less. Travis nodded, relief evident in his eyes. I just want it to be over. It will be, Russell promised. Sooner than you think. The military detention facility was a stark, imposing structure of concrete and steel. Russell was searched, scanned, and escorted through multiple security checkpoints before being led to a visitation room. Liam Reynolds was already seated at a steel table, hands cuffed to a ring bolted to its surface. He looked up as Russell entered, surprise quickly masked by a smirk. Boyd, didn't expect to see you here. I wanted to see you face to face, Russell said, taking the seat opposite him, to deliver a message. Reynolds leaned back as far as his restraints allowed. Let me guess. You're here to tell me how I ruined your life, destroyed your marriage, maybe threatened a little prison justice. No, Russell replied calmly. I'm here to thank you. Reynolds blinked, clearly thrown by the response. Thank me? For what? For showing me who my wife really was. For exposing weaknesses in my family that I can now address. For teaching my son a valuable lesson about trust and betrayal that will serve him well in life. You're welcome, Reynolds said sarcastically. Anything else? Yes. I'm also here to inform you that Meridian Defense has terminated your arrangement. The color drained from Reynolds' face. I don't know what you're talking about. Save it, Reynolds. I've seen the communications, the transfers, everything. Thomas Hargrove sends his regrets, but your services are no longer required. You spoke to Hargrove? Reynolds asked, his composure slipping. We came to an understanding. Meridian is walking away from this entire situation, including you and your brothers. Reynolds leaned forward, lowering his voice. You don't understand what you're dealing with, Boyd. Meridian isn't just some defense contractor. They've got operations globally, connections to intelligence agencies. If Hargrove feels threatened, Hargrove isn't the one you should be worried about, Russell interrupted. I am. You? Reynolds laughed, but there was no humor in it. What are you going to do from out there while I'm in here? Russell smiled, and something in that expression made Reynolds flinch. Let me be perfectly clear, Reynolds. You threatened my son. You tried to have me killed. There is no prison secure enough to protect you from what's coming if you ever mention my family again. Is that a threat, Boyd? Because I could have the MPs in here right now. It's not a threat, Russell replied calmly. It's a promise. From one professional to another. If any harm comes to my son, any harm at all, I will hold you personally responsible. And you know what I'm capable of. Reynolds studied him, the cockiness fading from his expression. What do you want from me? 3 things. First, you never mentioned Travis in your testimony. Not his name, not his involvement, nothing. As far as you're concerned, he doesn't exist. And the other 2? Second, you make it clear to the prosecution that Adrian was a willing participant in your operation. No coercion, no threats. She betrayed her country and her family by choice. Reynolds smiled thinly. Throwing your wife under the bus? Cold boy. She stopped being my wife the moment she put our son in danger, Russell replied. And third, you forget anything you know about Meridian's involvement. When asked who the domestic buyer was, you don't remember, you don't know, you never had that information. And why would I do any of this for you? Russell leaned forward. Because if you don't, recordings of your conversations with Adrian planning my death will find their way to certain inmates with particular feelings about people who target soldiers' families. The kind of inmates who can reach you no matter which facility they transfer you to. Reynolds' jaw tightened. You're bluffing. Those recordings would incriminate your wife too. Do I look like I care about protecting Adrian at this point? Russell asked. She made her choice. Now you make yours. The 2 men stared at each other across the table, a silent battle of wills. Finally, Reynolds looked away. Fine, he muttered. I'll keep the kid out of it, and I'll tell the truth about your wife's involvement. But Meridian is more dangerous than you realize, Boyd. If I start forgetting things they think I know. Leave Meridian to me, Russell said, standing. Focus on surviving the next 20 years in prison. It's going to be harder than you think. As Russell turned to leave, Reynolds called after him. Hey, Boyd, for what it's worth, your kid's got guts. Stood up to me in the end when it counted. You should be proud. Russell paused at the door. I am proud, and that's the only reason you're still breathing. Chapter 8, Broken Pieces. The legal proceedings dragged on for months. Russell attended each hearing, each preliminary motion, watching the system slowly grind toward justice. Travis testified once, a closed session with only the judge and attorneys present. He spoke the truth about Reynolds' threats, about his mother's willing participation, about the night Russell had saved him from the intruders. Liam Reynolds and his brothers accepted plea deals rather than risk trial. 25 years each in federal prison, no possibility of parole for at least 15. The official charges were conspiracy, attempted murder of a federal officer, and espionage. Adrienne's case proved more complicated. With Travis's testimony contradicting her claims of coercion, the prosecution took a harder line. Her attorneys still managed to negotiate a reduced sentence, 12 years, eligible for parole after 8, in exchange for her continued cooperation in identifying other members of Reynolds' network. Throughout the proceedings, Russell maintained his silence about Meridian's involvement. Hargrove kept his end of the bargain. No further surveillance, no attempts to interfere. The trust for Travis remained intact, growing steadily for his future education. Life settled into a new routine. Russell requested and received a transfer to a training position, allowing him more regular hours to be home with Travis. The boy began therapy, working through the trauma of betrayal and manipulation. There were nightmares, anxiety attacks, moments of rage and grief, but gradually, healing began. 6 months after Reynolds' sentencing, Russell received a request from Adrian to visit her in prison. His first instinct was to refuse, but after discussing it with Travis's therapist, he reconsidered. Closure might be beneficial, not just for him, but for his understanding of how to help Travis. The women's detention facility was less imposing than the military prison where Reynolds was held, but the security was just as tight. Adrian had lost weight, her once styled hair now pulled back in a simple ponytail. She seemed smaller somehow, diminished by the setting and her circumstances. Thank you for coming, she said as Russell took his seat across from her. Why did you want to see me, Adrian? She looked down at her hands. I've had a lot of time to think in here, about the choices I made, the people I hurt. And I wanted to apologize. Not just for the affair, but for everything. For betraying your trust, for putting Travis in danger, for being so blind to what Reynolds really was. Russell studied her, searching for manipulation or deception. He found only exhaustion and regret. It's too late for apologies, he said finally. What's done is done. I know, she admitted. I don't expect forgiveness. I needed you to know that I understand now. How completely I destroyed everything we had. Why did you do it? Russell asked, the question that had haunted him for months. We had a good life. A family. Was it just the money? Adrian was silent for a long moment. It started as an affair. Simple, selfish. You were gone so much, and when you were home, you were distant. Liam made me feel desired, important. She shook her head. The information came later. Small things at first, your deployment dates, general locations. He paid well, and it seemed harmless. Harmless, Russell repeated, his voice flat. I told myself it was, she admitted. By the time I realized what he was really after, I was in too deep. He had evidence of my involvement. If I'd backed out, I'd have gone to prison anyway. So you decided to help him plan my death instead? She flinched. I never believed he would actually harm you. I thought it would just be stealing information. Technology, not murder. You knew exactly what he was planning, Adrian. Don't lie to me now. Not after everything. Tears filled her eyes. You're right. I knew, and I did nothing to stop it. I convinced myself it wasn't real, that it would never happen. She wiped her eyes. How is Travis? Healing, Russell said. No thanks to you. Will you let me see him? Just once? Russell's expression hardened. That's his decision, not mine. He's old enough to choose whether he wants contact with you. I won't force him either way. And us? Is there any chance? There is no us, Adrian. There never will be again. You didn't just betray me as a husband. You betrayed me as a soldier, as an American. You put our son in danger. There's no coming back from that. She nodded, accepting this. Understand. I just hope someday Travis can find it in his heart to forgive me, even if you can't. Like I said, that's his choice to make. Russell stood to leave. Goodbye, Adrian. Russell, she called as he turned away. Be careful. Reynolds had other connections, people even he was afraid of, the kind of people who don't forget or forgive. Russell paused. Is that a threat, Adrian? A warning, she said quietly. I've told the FBI everything I know, but Reynolds kept some things compartmentalized. He had a partner, someone he called the Professor. I never met him, but Liam was careful not to cross him. If this professor thinks you're a liability. I can take care of myself, Russell said. And Travis? I know you can, she replied. Just watch your back. Russell left the prison with mixed emotions. Adrian seemed genuinely remorseful, but it changed nothing about the choices she'd made, the damage she'd done. And now there was this new information about the professor, another potential threat to monitor. He called Major Wilson as soon as he reached his car. Adrian mentioned someone in Reynolds' network called the Professor, Russell explained. Someone even Reynolds was cautious around. Has this come up in the investigation? Wilson was silent for a moment. Yes, but it's classified. How did she know about that? Reynolds talked about him, apparently. What do we know? Not much, Wilson admitted. An academic background, likely teaching at a university in the Northeast. Expert in advanced weapons systems, particularly AI integration. We have some electronic communications, but no clear identity. Is he a continuing threat? Honestly, we don't know. The FBI has taken the lead on that aspect. Last I heard, they had narrowed it down to 3 or 4 suspects, all with the right expertise and connections. Russell processed this. I need to know if he's a threat to Travis. I'll make some calls, Wilson promised. See what I can find out. In the meantime, stay alert. After ending the call, Russell sat in his car, thinking through the implications. Just when it seemed they were reaching resolution, a new complication emerged. He hadn't mentioned the professor to Travis, hadn't wanted to give the boy new reasons for anxiety, just as he was beginning to feel safe again. But if this person was as dangerous as Reynolds had implied to Adrian, then Russell needed to prepare. Not just for his own safety, but for Travis's as well. That evening, as Russell was helping Travis with his homework, his secure phone rang. The number was blocked. Boyd. He answered, moving into the other room. It's Hargrove, came the familiar voice. We need to talk. In person. About what? About the professor. Tonight. Same hotel, same room, 1 hour. The call ended before Russell could respond. He stared at the phone, his mind racing. How did Hargrove know about the professor? And why reach out now? Russell arranged for Brian to stay with Travis, explaining only that he had a work emergency. Travis looked worried, but didn't question it. Another sign of the lingering trauma, this constant fear that threats might reemerge at any moment. "I won't be long," Russell promised. "Brian will stay until I'm back. Standard procedures if anything happens." Travis nodded, their code word for the emergency protocols Russell had established. Routes to safe houses, contact methods, rendezvous points if they were separated. The Renaissance Hotel was quieter this time, the evening crowd thinner. Russell took the same precautions, approaching room 1242 via an indirect route, alert for any sign of an ambush. Hargrove was alone again, looking more haggard than during their previous meeting. "Thank you for coming," he said as Russell entered. "You mentioned the professor," Russell replied, remaining standing. "How do you know that name?" Hargrove gestured to a folder on the table between them. "Because Meridian has been tracking him for years. He approached us once, offering technology similar to what Reynolds later promised. We declined. Why? His price was too high. Not just money, but access to our defense systems, our contracts with the military." Hargrove shook his head. "Even for Meridian, there are lines we won't cross." Russell picked up the folder, scanning its contents. Partial communications, financial traces, surveillance photos, all related to someone identified only as P. "Why show me this?" "Because he's looking for you," Hargrove said. "Our monitoring picked up queries in certain networks, people asking questions about Russell Boyd and his son. The pattern matches the professor's methods. And why would Meridian care if he finds me?" "Self-interest," Hargrove admitted. "If he eliminates you, the evidence you hold against us becomes public. And there's another factor. The professor has been trying to infiltrate Meridian for years. If he connects you to us, it gives him leverage he's been seeking." Russell considered this. "You're not telling me everything." Hargrove sighed. "No, I'm not. The full truth is that the professor was Reynolds' primary backer. The technology Reynolds was trying to acquire wasn't just for Meridian or foreign buyers. It was primarily for the professor's own operation. We were a secondary market, a way for Reynolds to maximize his profit. What operation? We don't know details. Something involving autonomous weapons systems with integrated AI, beyond cutting edge. And now he's cleaning house," Russell concluded, "eliminating loose ends like me who might connect him to Reynolds." "Precisely. Which is why I'm warning you." Russell closed the folder, his decision made. "I need everything you have on him. Every scrap of intelligence, every suspected location, every associate." "That's not part of our arrangement," Hargrove protested. "It is now," Russell said. "Unless you'd prefer, I go to the FBI and tell them about Meridian's involvement with Reynolds. I'm sure they'd be very interested, especially with their ongoing investigation into the professor." Hargrove studied him before nodding reluctantly. "I'll have a complete file delivered to you. But understand this, Boyd. The professor is not like Reynolds. He's not a soldier or mercenary. He's something altogether more dangerous." "What's that?" "A true believer," Hargrove said. "Someone who thinks his work is so important that any price is worth paying, any life worth sacrificing. The most dangerous kind of adversary." Russell left the hotel with the folder, his mind already formulating a plan. For too long, he'd been reactive, responding to threats as they emerged. It was time to take the initiative to end this cycle of danger permanently. The professor had made a critical mistake by searching for Russell. He'd revealed himself, created a trail that could be followed back to its source. And Russell had spent 15 years learning how to follow such trails, how to find people who didn't want to be found. The hunter was about to become the hunted. Chapter 9. The Final Reckoning. The complete file arrived the next morning, a secure digital package delivered by courier. Russell spent hours going through it, methodically building a profile of the man known as the professor. Dr. Elias Chambers, former Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, DARPA, researcher, dismissed after advocating for autonomous weapons systems beyond ethical guidelines. Current position, tenured professor of advanced robotics at an Ivy League university. Published extensively on neural networks and machine learning applications in weapon systems. More concerning were his connections, former intelligence operatives, black market weapons dealers, military contractors with questionable ethics. A network that spanned continents, all serving Chambers' vision of a revolution in warfare technology. Reynolds had been just one asset in this network, tasked with acquiring specific components that Chambers needed for his prototype system. With Reynolds imprisoned, Chambers was now personally directing efforts to tie up loose ends, including Russell and potentially Travis. Russell's first instinct was to take this information to the FBI, let them handle Chambers through official channels. But the file revealed another complication. Chambers had protectors within the government, former colleagues who believed in his work despite its ethical implications. Any official investigation would trigger warnings, giving Chambers time to disappear. No, this would require a more direct approach. Russell spent the next week in careful preparation. He established secure accommodations for Travis at a military school where the son of another Special Forces operator attended, a place with security protocols designed to protect children of personnel who might be targeted. It's just for a few weeks, Russell explained as he dropped Travis off. Like a special training program. Jason will be there with you. Travis looked skeptical but resigned. Is this about what Mom mentioned? The professor? Russell shouldn't have been surprised that Travis had overheard his conversation with Wilson. The boy had developed keen situational awareness through harsh experience. Yes, Russell admitted. There's one more loose and I need to tie up. Then it's really over. Travis studied his father's face. You're going after him. I'm going to make sure he never comes after us. Travis was quiet for a moment. Just come back, okay? You're all I've got now. Russell pulled his son into a tight embrace. I promise. With Travis secure, Russell traveled to Philadelphia, where Chambers taught at the university. He established surveillance, mapping the professor's routine, identifying vulnerabilities. Chambers was cautious, varied routes, private security, encrypted communications, but not military trained. There were openings if one knew where to look. On the fifth day, Russell identified his opportunity. Chambers had a standing reservation at an exclusive restaurant near campus every Wednesday evening. He dined alone, reviewing papers while he ate, his security detail positioned discreetly at nearby tables. Russell wouldn't confront him there. Too public, too many variables. But he could plant a listening device, gather more intelligence for the final confrontation. The device placement went smoothly. Disguised as a maintenance worker, Russell accessed the restaurant's HVAC system hours before Chambers' arrival, placing a pinhole microphone near his usual table. That evening, listening from a van parked across the street, Russell gained valuable insights. Chambers was speaking with someone on his phone. The Boyd situation is becoming problematic. He's connected to Meridian somehow. Yes, I understand the risk. The sun remains our best leverage if direct action becomes necessary. 3 days maximum. Then we proceed regardless. Russell's blood ran cold. 3 days, and they were still considering using Travis as leverage. The timeline had just accelerated dramatically. Russell abandoned his methodical approach. The next evening, he tracked Chambers to his home, an elegant brownstone in an upscale neighborhood. Security was minimal there. One guard at the entrance, basic electronic surveillance. Chambers apparently believed his anonymous status was protection enough, a mistake Russell would exploit. At 2 a.m., when the neighborhood was silent and dark, Russell disabled the security system and entered through a service entrance. He moved through the house like a ghost, locating Chambers' bedroom on the second floor. The professor slept soundly, unaware of the intruder in his home. Russell placed a hand over Chambers' mouth, pressing his weapon against the man's temple. Chambers woke instantly, eyes wide with fear. Dr. Chambers, Russell said quietly, or do you prefer the professor? We need to talk. Russell secured Chambers to a chair in his home office, where soundproofing for video conferences would prevent any noise from alerting neighbors. Russell Boyd, I presume, Chambers said, remarkably composed despite his situation. I've been expecting you, though not quite like this. You've been looking for me, Russell replied. Now you've found me. Indeed, the Special Forces operator who derailed years of planning, millions in investment. The father who wouldn't look the other way when his family was threatened. Speaking of threats, Russell said, I heard your phone conversation. 3 days until you proceed regardless. Care to explain what that means for my son? Chambers sighed. A contingency. One I'd prefer not to implement. Russell's hand tightened on his weapon. You won't be implementing anything once I'm done here. Before you do something irrevocable, Mr. Boyd, perhaps you should consider the full picture. Chambers nodded toward his computer. Check the files marked Prometheus. See what Reynolds was really helping me acquire. Against his better judgment, Russell accessed the files, keeping Chambers in his peripheral vision. The documents detailed an autonomous defense system designed to identify and neutralize threats before they materialized, terrorist attacks, mass shootings, even military coups. You're building an AI weapon, Russell said. I'm building a shield, Chambers corrected. A system that could save thousands of lives, prevent conflicts before they begin, by giving an algorithm the power to decide who lives and dies. By removing human error and emotion from critical security decisions. Chambers leaned forward as far as his restraints allowed. Imagine a world where the next bin Laden is identified and neutralized before he can orchestrate an attack, where school shooters are flagged and intercepted before they can acquire weapons. And who controls this system? You. It controls itself. That's the point. No political agenda, no prejudice, no hesitation when action is required. Russell closed the files. And you think that justifies threatening a 14-year-old boy, using my son as leverage? Regrettable, Chambers admitted. Reynolds went too far there. I authorized surveillance, information gathering, but not threats against your family. That was his initiative, not mine. You expect me to believe that? Check the communications in the Rhodes folder. You'll see my explicit instructions to Reynolds that no harm should come to civilians, especially children. Russell kept his weapon trained on Chambers while he checked the reference files. The emails confirmed Chambers' claim. He had specifically instructed Reynolds to keep operations clean and to avoid involving Travis. Reynolds was becoming a liability, Chambers continued. Volatile, escalating beyond parameters. If you hadn't stopped him, I would have been forced to terminate our arrangement. Very convenient, Russell said skeptically. And now you expect me to just walk away? After your people have been searching for me, planning to use my son as leverage? Not quite. Chambers straightened in his chair. I'm offering you a choice, Mr. Boyd. Work with me instead of against me. Your skills, your experience, they would be invaluable to my operation. In exchange, I guarantee your son's absolute safety. More than safety, security, opportunities, a future beyond anything you could provide alone. Russell laughed humorlessly. You're offering me a job? After everything that's happened? I'm offering you purpose, Chambers replied. The same purpose that drove you to join the military, protecting the innocent, securing a safer world, just with more effective tools. For a moment, Russell tried to see the world through Chambers' eyes, a system that could prevent attacks before they happened, save lives that would otherwise be lost. The soldier in him recognized the appeal, but the father in him remembered Travis's fear, the trauma the boy had endured because of men like Chambers who believed the ends justified any means. You're right about one thing, Russell said finally. I do want a safer world, especially for my son. He raised his weapon, and that starts with eliminating threats like you. Chambers' composure cracked. You'd be making a terrible mistake. My work is too important. The technology is already developed, the network established. Killing me won't stop it. I'm not going to kill you, Professor, Russell said, lowering his weapon. I'm going to expose you. He held up a small device. Everything you've said in the last hour has been recorded. Your files have been copied. By morning, the FBI, Homeland Security, and the University Board will all have detailed evidence of your operation, your methods, and your threats against a military family. They'll bury it, Chambers said desperately. I have connections, people who understand the importance of my work. Some might try, Russell acknowledged. But I've learned a few things about leverage myself. The files have also gone to selected media outlets, congressional oversight committees, and military intelligence. Too many channels to suppress completely. He stood, pocketing the recording device. Your career is over, Professor. Your network will be dismantled. Your technology will be seized. And you'll spend the rest of your life in a federal prison wondering where you miscalculated. They'll come after you, Chambers warned. My associates, my backers. They have resources you can't imagine. Let them come, Russell replied calmly. I'll be waiting. But understand this. If anything happens to my son, if he so much as has a nightmare because of you or your people, there won't be a place on this earth where you can hide from me. And next time, I won't be so merciful. Russell left Chambers secured to the chair, the evidence already transmitting to the destinations he'd arranged. By the time the professor was found, it would be too late to contain the damage. 3 days later, the news broke. Dr. Elias Chambers, respected academic